Well, what's going on, my friends? Chad doing here, a little Friday edition of the Rip City Drive. I hope you're enjoying your day. I certainly am. And, after almost a week removed. Well, what's going on, my friends? Chad doing here, a little Friday edition of the Rip City Drive. I hope you're enjoying your day. I certainly am. And, after almost a week removed from the Well, what's going on, my friends? Chad doing here. Well, what's going on, my friends? Chad doing here, a little Friday edition of the Rip City Drive. I hope you're enjoying your day. I certainly am. And, after almost a week removed from the Trailblazers season, my body feels refreshed. I'm excited about what's ahead. And, man, it's been nice to just have a normal life over the last 4 days. Being able to go home after work in the evenings. I've been spending more time just communicating with my daughter. I've been able to watch some programs at night. I've really been all over Celtic City. I can't encourage you enough to get to HBO Max and pull up Celtic City. If you're a sports fan, you're going to enjoy it. Even if you're not a big sports fan, I think you'll enjoy the documentary because of the interviews, the different characters that are involved. I've seen a lot of stuff from Robert Parrish, from Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and last night's episode actually got me a little misty-eyed when it came to the end of Bird's career. And it reminded me, that the last couple of episodes that I've been watching is like right in my wheelhouse for when I started watching the NBA Finals. And they did a good job of highlighting in the episode, when they first got to Magic and Bird, the 1984 NBA Finals. That is the series. It went 7 games. The Celtics won it in 7 games. The Lakers should have been up 2-0 going back to L.A. They won game 1. They were in a position to win game 2, and James Worthy threw the ball away. Gerald Henderson intercepted the pass and laid it in. Game 2 went into overtime. The Celtics get the win and even up the series. Had they not pulled off the miraculous with Gerald Henderson, they lose the game. They're down 2-0, and the series is over. But they go back to L.A., tied 1-1. Lakers destroy them in game 3. And after that game, Larry Bird was really upset. He said his team didn't have the heart to be able to go out there and play and compete against a team like the Lakers. He called his teammates a bunch of sissies. And then they went out there and it got physical. Kevin McHale, who is described by his teammates as one of the kindest souls on the court, is the one who clotheslined Kurt Rambis. And that started a brawl. And then after that, the Lakers started focusing on the Celtics and fighting with them instead of playing basketball. Celtics win the game, even up the series, and they end up winning in 7. That's the NBA Finals that took the NBA to a different level. Bird, Magic, Celtics, Lakers, 2 massive brands, 2 massive superstars, and 2 big cities, New York and LA. But that's the series that laid the groundwork for everything else that came after. And so it's pretty awesome to see that. But just to get some details on Larry Bird that I was unaware of, I didn't even think that was possible. And the other thing I like, too, that I've noticed is Bill Simmons, who is the one that is behind the documentary. He's got his dad on there, and he and his dad had tickets to the Celtics. So they went to all these games together. And what I realize now is, his dad got the tickets, and what he enjoyed most about it was having something that he and his son could share together. And that was the Celtics. And they would go to games together. They would talk about the games. They love Larry Bird. And to see that connection and stuff, it's been nice. So check out Celtic City. You're not going to be disappointed. Now, tomorrow, this is what it's going to look like tomorrow. NBA playoffs kick off, and tomorrow is going to be action-packed. 10 a.m. on ESPN, Bucks at the Pacers, game 1. Indiana favored by 5.5. After that, at 12:30 on ESPN, it's the Clippers in Denver to face the Nuggets. Denver is a 2.5-point favorite in game 1. Fascinating matchup. The Clippers, I think, 18-3 down the stretch, playing really good basketball. And they've got 3 or 4 guys who can score 20 or more going up against Nikola Jokic. At 3 o'clock on ESPN, the Pistons at the Knicks. And that should be a physical type series. The Pistons are one of the great stories in the NBA. Worst record in the NBA last year, 44 wins this year, and part of the playoffs. And then the Knicks, what I respect about them is, seeing them throughout the year, they play as hard as anyone. Coach Tibbs gets those guys to compete, and you can see that there's some real good togetherness with that group, which is nice. I like their roster. I like the Knicks. It's going to be fun to watch them in the postseason, when they run into the 2 upper echelon teams, Cleveland or Boston. How's that going to shake out? How's that going to look? Well, I can't wait to see it. So, but the Knicks are fun to watch. And then the nightcapper, 5:30 on ABC, it's going to be the Timberwolves at the Lakers. And it's hard to believe, but the Lakers, you think about this before the Luka trade, they were just the same stale basketball team. They had LeBron, they had AD, and not much else. Austin Reeves. It was a team that was going nowhere. Well, you fast forward a couple of months, and now we're going into the playoffs, and the Lakers got an incredible draw and are now in a wild position to where they can reach the Western Conference Finals. Now, I don't think the Lakers or anyone else, for that fact, in the West is going to be able to get through Oklahoma City. But is it impossible to believe that a team with as much experience as the Lakers with Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves, three guys who can initiate offense, three guys who can score, that's going to be tough to slow down. I mean, Oklahoma City has youth. They have no playoff experience. They have one series win in the postseason together as a group. Now, I think Oklahoma City is head and shoulders above everyone else, but isn't it possible that maybe some of the young guys, especially on the road, get tight, that they start to feel some of the pressure? And it's definitely a possibility. And the Lakers are sitting right there. So the Lakers get Minnesota in the first round. They match up really well with Minnesota. I don't think the Timberwolves are going to have enough firepower and offense to be able to get the job done. So I would expect the Lakers to advance. I would be stunned if the Lakers don't advance into round two. Now, the Lakers, if they advance, will face the winner of the Rockets and Warriors. Now, most people think the Warriors are going to win that series. Well, if that's the case, LA matches up really well with Golden State. And then all of a sudden, you avoid two of these three teams, Denver, the Clippers, and Oklahoma City. It's an incredible draw for LA. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. Now, on Sunday, we'll get game one with the Rockets and Warriors. And I'm excited about that series. For me, of all the first-round matchups, Rockets and Warriors, I think, is going to be the most entertaining. And I'm fascinated to see how it plays out. Because the Rockets, they're a lot like the Thunder from the standpoint that they don't have a ton of playoff experience. So we're not really sure how their guys are going to react. What we do know about the Rockets is that they're a terrific rebounding team, like a dominant rebounding team, and they're great defensively. And they have multiple wings, long-bodied athletes who can defend Steph Curry, like Amen Thompson. So they've got a lot of the tools you need to be successful in the postseason, rebounding and defense. The problem is not a great shooting team, not great in the half court. So what's going to give? And if you look at the two teams side by side, Steve Kerr is probably the better coach. Probably. Ime Udoka is one heck of a coach, but you probably give the nod to Kerr right now. And who's got the best player? Well, that's Steph Curry. So best coach, best player goes to the Warriors. More depth, more length, better defense, Rockets. Although the Warriors are a really good defensive ball club. I guess my big concern for Golden State is who's going to be the third guy next to Steph and Jimmy Butler when it comes to scoring. Who's going to step up if Steph has an off game, which is quite possible against the Rockets because they are one of the few teams that can do a pretty good job of limiting some of his craziness, maybe some of his outbursts where he gets on fire. But who's going to be the third guy? Is it Brandon Pajinski? Is it somebody else? I mean, I don't know. Can Jimmy and Steph carry them through the course of the entire series? So I'm anxious to see how it plays out. I'm leaning Rockets in the series, but I do acknowledge that their lack of experience and their lack of offense is a bit concerning because even if you're great defensively like the Rockets, it's going to be hard to keep the Warriors at bay for the entire series. And then the Warriors can turn around and frustrate defensively. I guess what I'm concerned about is the Rockets' offense up against the Warriors' defense. Can they find enough? Because you know how it works. The Rockets are great at creating turnovers and getting out in the open floor, a little run-and-gun action, using their athleticism to score. But the problem is in the postseason, you're going up against teams that are better prepared. Teams put in an entire game plan against their opponent. They study film. They break it down. It's so much more in-depth postseason-wise compared to the regular season when teams are flying all over the country playing games. You've got more time to sit and focus on your opponent. And then if you're not accustomed to them or if something catches you off guard in game one, you got plenty of time to adjust. from game to game. I mean, that's why I love the NBA playoffs so much because the preparation, the intensity, and the familiarity with your opponent make for great games. So I'm just concerned about the Rockets' offense. Will they find enough shooting, enough scoring? Can they get enough out of the half court to be able to be competitive? And I don't know the answer to the question. But I do know one thing: when you can defend the way they do and you can rebound the way they do, and they've got more size than the Warriors, they're going to be able to create some problems. So I'm fascinated to see how the matchup plays out. Now I can tell you what the NBA wants. They want the Lakers and Warriors big time. And if I'm coaching either the Timberwolves or if I'm Ime Udoka with the Rockets, I let my guys know, hey, look, just so you know now, the calls are not going to go our way. We're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. So you've got to leave no doubt when you go out there on the floor to make sure you dominate your opponent. Adam Silver is on his hands and knees praying to God that he gets the Lakers and Warriors in round 2, just like everyone here in Portland is praying that the Blazers move up to number 1 so they can select Cooper Flagg. That's how much it matters to him. And frankly, I understand it. Who wouldn't want to watch that series? LeBron and Steph, Jimmy Butler, Luka. Like, it's got everything you want. Big brands, superstar power, and some of the most recognizable players in the entire league on the planet. So, yeah, the Lakers and Warriors would be a fascinating matchup in the second round. But I'm telling you, don't sleep on the Rockets. They were second best in the conference. They won over 50 games, and Ime Udoka's got this team moving in the right direction. And what I love is the way they defend the pick and roll. They're aggressive. I mean, they'll blitz you. They'll force turnovers. They're aggressive when it comes to rebounding, and they do have athleticism. So when they do get in the open floor, they can get out there and make things happen and convert. So it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to the playoffs. And again, it goes back to player movement. You know, some fans get jealous at player movement. Some people don't like player movement, but I'll tell you what, it sure has, provided a shot in the arm for this postseason in the NBA. Jimmy Butler going to Golden State and Luka Doncic going to the Lakers is better for the game. It's better for the television product. It's better for the game. It's better for the fans because it's going to be fun to watch. And I want to see how it plays out. So I'm pretty geeked. All right, Rip City Drive, we got a lot of things coming up. If you missed it, we're going to get a chance to hear from Joe Cronin again. He joined the Rip City Drive earlier this week, and we cover all things Portland Trailblazers, which is great. We'll give you a little recap on Chauncey Billups and some of the nonsense that people want to continue to bring up. Aaron Fincher did a heck of a job with that. But most importantly, I just want to chill with you on this Friday and talk some sports. We got good things coming up. NFL draft just a few days away. NBA playoffs kickoff tomorrow. That's what I'm talking about. If you want to reach out to me, you'll find me on social at Chad and Rip City, or you can call. Telephone number here is 503-248-0620, 503-248-0620. We're also going to hear Aaron Rodgers verbally murder the New York Jets. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, for those of you who golf, I think you can relate to this entire situation. And this is a report that came out, and it's was picked up by the New York Post, and this took place on Monday. But a brawl broke out at Two Eagles Golf Course in Kelowna, BC, during a Monday night league. Witnesses say slow play was the cause of the altercation, with the blue shirt group having hit into a slower group, which led to one man suffering a broken jaw. Cops were called, but no charges have been filed to date. Quote, it's Monday night bleeping golf. You in a rush? Where you got to be? You hit it up our ass all day. So, look, I see this stuff take place on the golf course all the time. In fact, I ran into that same situation this morning. I teed off early. I was in a threesome, and there was two players in front of us who I could tell just by what was taking place they were beginners or at least don't play golf very often. And they were spraying shots all over the place. And I got to be honest with you, I couldn't care less what type of golfer you are. I've played with great golfers. I've played with bad golfers. It really doesn't matter to me. I'm not worried about somebody else's game because I'm of the opinion, regardless of the type of game you have, you can play at a good pace or you can play at a real slow pace. That's just pretty simple, right? But these two guys were, two holes behind. And they were slowing us up. And it was a twosome. And we're three guys. But I told you, I learned from that young lady I played golf with in Colorado last year that I'm not going to allow other things, frustration, anger, disrupt my process. I'm going to be the same person, shot to shot. And I'm really focusing on the mental aspect of the game, along with the other details that Coach Nick's got me working on right now. But it's a big deal to me. I'm trying to master the mental side, self-control, focus, breathing. I just want to be the best I can be. No matter what I'm doing, I'm always trying to find a way to improve and to continue to grow. I do that with my workouts. I do that when I'm playing golf. You may not notice it, but I try to do that when I'm hosting a radio show. Those things are important to me. But these guys were slow. And so what is your solution? How do you handle guys that are slow? I'll tell you one thing that drives me insane. If someone hits into me, that causes my my blood to boil. It's like you can kill someone with a golf ball. You should not be hitting into someone. And I don't care if someone in front of you is playing slow. You should not hit into them. Slow golfers are not a reason for you to firebomb someone with golf balls. I'm sorry, but I draw the line somewhere. You cannot hit into someone. That's crazy. So my solution after about 6 holes, I just called the clubhouse and said, hey, we're on hole such and such. We've got a twosome in front of our threesome that is 2 full holes behind. And I knew that because I could look and see the next 2 holes. And the guys who were in front of them were already off the hole. They were 2 holes behind. So I just said, hey, if you can send someone out, could you please do that? I don't feel like it's my job to approach strangers to express to them that they need to pick up their pace. I don't want to get into any type of verbal altercation. I'm not trying to piss anyone off. I just don't want to do that, right? That's not my style. So I did call the clubhouse. They let me know that it was early and if they could send someone out or find someone, they would do that. Well, that help never came, but they eventually picked up their pace a bit. Fortunately, it was early. It was during the week. We still finished in about 3 hours and probably 40 minutes. But it's a round that would have taken like 3 hours had those guys not been in front of us. But, I would say of all the things on the golf course that are the most mind-numbingly bad, and there's a few of them, I think slow play takes the cake. It takes the cake. Slow play when it's unnecessary and it can be solved just by picking up the pace. That's all you got to do. You walk up, you get to your ball. If you need to take a practice swing, that's fine. Hit your ball and move on. If you lose a ball, take a couple of moments to look and see if you can find it. But if not, move on. But the excessive, 5, 6, 10 practice swings, standing over the ball, backing off, standing over again, practice swings, and then just taking your sweet time, that's crazy. But I wasn't angry because I knew these guys were, probably new to the game. And, when you're new to the game, the game's hard enough. You're not focused on everything else around you. But I'm not going to get into a brawl. I don't want to break anyone's jaw. I don't want to get my jaw broken. and it's very uncomfortable when people get violent on the golf course. It's a place where you should be enjoying yourself, where it could be peaceful. But I'm telling you, if you're a slow player, pick up the pace. The slow, you know what it is? If you're on the course and you're going slow, it's the person in the far left lane on the freeway going slow and completely oblivious to anyone that's behind them. You're not solving matters. You're not helping people by slowing them down. You're causing frustration in the highest levels. Same thing on the golf course. If you're playing slow and you're 2 holes behind, you're not going to help anyone in that situation. All right. You're going to infuriate people. But I would say slow play is number one. I don't know what number 2 is, but I would say number 1 is slow play. Number 2 on my list is probably people that don't fix divots and just leave the green all pot marked like Greg Popovich's face. Like, that bothers me. And music at an extreme level, I think it's crazy. If you want to play music in your cart or from your bag at a lower level where you can hear it, that's fine. But the people that blast the music where you can hear it from like 2 holes over, I think that's a little bit weird. Because, again, part of the reason why I'm out there is for some of the peace and quiet and to get away from the constant noise of life. But I do not want to get into a brawl where you're hitting into people and then fists start flying. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff right there. All right. I want to play this because I think it's important. But Michael Holton on Hoops, he was in studio. And what I did is I went down the line and I asked him to give me kind of a quick hit synopsis on what he saw from the 5 young guys. And, of course, the 5 young guys, I'm talking about Scoot, Shaden, Donovan Clingan, the rookie center, and, of course, the 2 dynamos at forward, Denny Avdia and Tamani Kamara. Michael Holton, unique because he played in the NBA. He's an analyst and covers every game of the Trailblazers. And he was a coach. So he's got a very keen eye for the game. He picks up on things that I don't see. He understands the game at a different level than I do. And so I like to get details when it comes to certain players. And he kind of gave me the quick synopsis on those 5 guys. I also asked him about, Coach Billups and where he saw the most growth in Coach Billups this year, especially in the second half of the season with the improvement in defense, the winning streak. They exceeded everyone's expectations. They did a lot of good things. So I broke that down with Chauncey Billups, and I want you to take a listen. Let's start with Scoot Henderson. What have you seen from Scoot in terms of his development throughout this season?
Decision-making, realizing that the lane he's most comfortable traveling in is not the best lane always. Mm-hmm. In other words, Scoot was most comfortable, I thought, coming into the Blazer organization as a full-speed guy. So what I saw this year was change of pace, change of direction, make a better decision before he leaves his feet. And so I saw timing, poise, and composure. And there's something interesting that happens in basketball when that happens. The game slows down for you. We hear that saying, the game slowed down for him. Well, that's how and why the game slows down. Your decision-making matures. And so now you're not in a hurry, like to use a Woodenism, be quick but don't hurry. Mm-hmm. And I thought Scoot learned how to be quick but not be in a hurry.
That's perfect. What about Shaden?
I thought Shaden realized that his athleticism conveys in some ways that he hadn't exploited. In other words, I think Shaden understands that, okay, if I go above the rim, I'm going to be alone. Nobody's going to beat me in that space, right? But off the dribble, he realized, wait a minute, I can use my athleticism, speed, and quickness to get into gaps and spots and then elevate. Because to me, what I saw this year in Shaden is he went from catching the ball off the rim on missed shots and catching lobs and getting behind the defense and then being hesitant with the dribble to make a decision, to being a guy that wasn't hesitant with the dribble, with a decision, and didn't waste any dribbles. So this year we saw Shaden Sharp probing the defense assertively and then looking at the footwork of the defender and starting to learn how to attack the lead foot.
What about Denny, our favorite guy on the team? He's so much fun to watch this year.
Denny is like an 18-wheeler on I-5. I mean, Denny is just what Denny does coming down the floor. let me just kind of put this in a 1-2-3. So Chauncey said, Denny, you get a rebound, you run, you go. Hey, everybody, Denny gets the ball, he's green lighted, you better go too. So all of a sudden, Denny was like, really? And so Denny rebounded more, pushed the ball more, got to the rim more on the break. But the thing about Denny that everybody started noticing, at least I did, was most guys Euro step to avoid contact.
Yeah.
Denny Euro steps to hit you, to dislodge you when you're not in legal guarding position. And so I started saying that. I'm like, I don't know if I've seen any player ever do that.
Yeah, and I learned something from you. I didn't realize that you can do this, but if you're not in legal guarding position, the refs will allow the offensive player to initiate some contact there, and Denny does a good job of that.
He does an excellent job of it. And what makes it so effective for Denny is that in initiating contact, he doesn't lose balance. So he initiates contact and then still finishes. And that's why he's top 5, I guess, in and ones in the league, because he doesn't play to draw fouls. He plays to hit you.
Yeah.
And be on balance and still make plays.
Yeah. Love that. Tamani Kamara.
Man, Tamani is just so special a player that I got to kind of catch my breath in that, how he came to the Blazers and then what he did initially was very typical of a guy not in the not in the rotation, but a non-starter.
Yeah.
You know, when you come in the game, you've got to play defense. You've got to create a couple of possessions. You got to make a couple of positive plays. So let's start there with Tamani Kamara. So he's that guy. And then this offseason, I think he had a conversation with Chauncey like, look, man, they're not guarding you. They're hiding their worst defender on you. And so Tamani went into the offseason a year ago and said, I don't want to be that guy. And so now all of a sudden, he balanced his game. So the defense stayed and got better, but it was already at a high level. His offense wasn't. He was a complimentary offensive player, maybe opportunistic, but he certainly wasn't aggressive or assertive.
Yeah.
And putting pressure on the defense. This year, I thought he crossed that threshold. I thought Tamani Kamara was a guy that was effectively putting pressure on the defense in addition to being an outstanding defender.
That's a great breakdown. He even has that little move now where he's not afraid to put the ball on the floor and drive past the closeout defender.
No, he drives the closeout. You know, driving the closeout, and this is kind of, I've only got 1 or 2 pet peeves where I'm critical of pros, you know, because I just don't think I should be critical, guys. But when you catch the ball in the corner and you try to drive the closeout and step out of bounds, drives me crazy, right? Because the line doesn't move. You got to drill yourself on that footwork. You got to be disciplined with your footwork in the NBA. Stepping out of bounds, taking a negative step and stepping out of bounds, man, I don't know if anything bothers me more in basketball. I say that because Tamani never does.
Yeah.
His catch, pump fake, drive to close out footwork is perfect.
Can I try and guess the other thing that drives you crazy?
Yeah, what do you think it is?
Straight line drives.
Oh, yeah. When your initial guarding position is you're like a matador, you're like Andale, you're like, yeah, you give up a straight line drive. You close out and the guy goes right by you. But let me tell you a story about why I'm so sensitive to that. Because my rookie year, I'm starting for the Phoenix Suns and I'm guarding Michael Jordan. And Jordan is in the corner and he's pump faking, he's doing the pump fake. And I'm getting closer to him on every pump fake. I'm getting so excited. Like, I'm going to get into this dude, right? I'm going to get a reputation by guarding Michael Jordan, right? But I came at him with the improper footwork, and I took a pump fake and came out of my stance, and he dunked on my center, James Edwards, right? And James Edwards told me after the game in the locker room, look, man, I know you're a rookie. Don't ever let that happen again.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I was just curious there. Finally, Donovan Clingan, the rookie who got more and more playing time as the season went along.
Yeah, I think, there's a saying of, do you play better and then you play more, or you play more and then you play better? And with Donovan Clingan, I always looked at him and I was like, I was trying to figure that part out because his minutes were inconsistent for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Whether it was foul trouble or DeAndre Ayton was playing great, or they're just always, for the first half of the season, until he got hurt. Before he got hurt,
Yeah.
it was like you couldn't figure out his deal in terms of, okay, consistently what's Donovan Clingan gonna be on the floor, right? Then he got hurt, and then his conditioning was questionable after the injury.
That's right.
For a stretch of games. So you still didn't know, right? And then down the stretch of the season, all of a sudden you saw the sample size of, oh, okay. All right, so he's a rebounder on both ends of the floor. He's a position defender on the ball and off the ball. He's a player that can execute verticality, so he doesn't get in foul trouble anymore. And he's a efficient offensive rebounder and putback guy. So the only thing kind of missing in the package, and Chauncey Billups kind of said it, is that developing go-to offensive moves, I think, is the next step for Donovan Clingan, because Donovan Clingan is an opportunistic offensive player right now. Gets it off the glass, but you don't run plays to him. You don't post him up. But I think he's good enough, and I think it's the next step in his growth and development to be a go-to destination offensively.
All right. We're talking with Michael Holton on Hoops here in the studio for the Rip City Drive. Coach Billups, what was the biggest area of growth or, change that you noticed in Coach Billups this year?
I think leadership courage. I'm going to say it again because most people in his situation, right? What, year 3, year 4, year 3?
Year 4.
Year 4. And the first 3 were tough, right? The roster was not constructed to win, and you're coaching through that. There's a human element to taking losses. And so you come through that, and now you're in a quote unquote contract year or year where a decision is going to be made about, your coaching future, and you don't change. You stay the course of what you believe in terms of developing players, and then you make some significant decisions around taking Scoot out of the lineup and taking Shaden out of the lineup. And you're public about that, not at their expense, but just for everybody's consumption. He was transparent. Hey, you know what? I think this is going to be better for that player for this reason at this point in his development. So what I'm describing is leadership courage. And saying that, I just kind of took my breath away, because most coaches do the safe thing, or they do the thing that is going to keep the locker room happy.
Yeah.
Particularly at the pro level, and particularly for a reasonably new coach at the pro level.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. It's, what'd you call it again? It's called leadership courage. He's definitely got a lot of that. He looks like a guy, even in a year where, he had uncertainty about his future in a contract year, like he handles himself pretty comfortably. Like, you can tell he's comfortable being in his own skin.
He's at peace with his game.
He certainly is.
No. Chauncey is really, he's experienced beyond what I think people give him credit for, and understandably so. When he came into coaching, I think he had a year with the Clippers and he became a head coach.
Yeah.
So it happened pretty fast.
Well, one thing I'm certain of, it's going to be a lot of fun to see how things play out throughout the course of the offseason, right? Not just with any of the roster changes, but I'm talking more in particular about the 5 young guys. We saw the growth and development this year, but what's that going to look like going into next season after a full offseason of, work, focus on, individual skills, and then they go through camp and get ready for a brand new season. Like, the expectations will be higher, and for good reason. But all those guys are young, including Denny Avdia, who's just 24 years old. So you see the growth, and that's part of the reason why I'm excited about having, Coach Billups back, is that you got the system, especially on defense, so the guys know what they're supposed to do. You're going to have continuity in that, and I think that's going to allow the young guys to continue to, improve and just feel comfortable in what they're supposed to be doing, their role on the team, and the way they're supposed to function as one unit. And then when you have the coach and the players on the same page, we'll start to see that, I don't know what the right word is, they'll start to gel. We'll just see them start to continue to develop a better feel for one another. So that's what I'm really excited about. I love the idea of continuity. I can't wait to see what these guys are able to do coming back next year. And then obviously the roster will have some changes. So, what are they going to add to the mix? And who's going to be a part of that moving forward? That's going to be fun to see. And I think this is the heart of, where the excitement is at, the energy around the team. So Big thanks to Michael Holton, as always, for sharing good insight. We appreciate that. We'll keep things rolling here. Chad doing Rip City Drive on this fabulous Friday. Hope you're enjoying it. And I do appreciate your time. And we'll keep things rolling here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. You've heard me mention it a time or two before, but I'm really excited about the player movement in the NBA and what it's done for the playoffs. Jimmy Butler with the Warriors, getting a chance to play with Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and of course Luka Doncic with the Lakers playing with LeBron and Austin Reeves. I don't know if those two teams can compete for a championship, but it certainly has made the Western Conference playoffs that much more exciting. Now, one thing I really enjoy is listening to greats and the way that they talk about other greats. And Steph Curry is, obviously one of the best basketball players of all time, arguably the greatest shooter of all time. He's a special player. Now, he's not perfect on the defensive end of the floor, but, what he's done to the game in terms of changing, offense and shooting and the way that he's able to stretch the defense, it's remarkable. And Jimmy Butler is, a unique player because he's a great two-way player. He can do it both ways. He's carried teams on his back. So he is a big-time playoff performer. But I love to hear the way that he respects Steph Curry and the way he talks about him. Take a listen to what Jimmy had to say about Steph, the opportunity to be Robin to his Batman.
I think any team has a chance when I'm on a team, but I know that every team has a chance if Steph's on the team. So I get to play Robin. That's my Batman, and I don't know who else is. We got all the villains over there, Two-Face and Joker and Riddler, everybody else in the Western Conference. But we got a lot of games to win.
Don't you enjoy that? I love hearing greats talk about greats, but you can hear the respect that exists between Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. You can see the way that Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler respect one another when they're on the floor together. And I think that's important. When you bring in new players and you bring in big personalities or big-time players, in order for it to work, there's got to be mutual respect. And I think that, just like we've learned with Russell Westbrook over the years, a lot of players around the league respect Russ because of the way he competes. And guys know Jimmy Butler. They know the type of gamer he is, how he's performed in the postseason. So it's easy for a guy like Jimmy to make a move to a place like Golden State, and he can blend in and fit in because they know Steph and Draymond and the rest of the guys that he's going to help them instantly, which he has. And Jimmy Butler can be a go-to guy. He can carry them at times. He takes a lot of pressure off of Steph. And defensively, with Jimmy Butler on the floor, it takes pressure off of Draymond. That's how that works, the way that those guys help each other. But I love the respect. It's the same thing in L.A. LeBron James has said on numerous occasions how much he respects the game of Luka Doncic with the way he plays and, his unique abilities. And Luka's really a bizarre type of player because he doesn't look like your ordinary NBA guard in today's game. He's not as quick. He's not as slender. He's a little slower and more prodding with the way he plays. He's, but very crafty, right? But what he does, and he does it very well, similar to what we see from Jokic going up against, a lot of slender, smaller centers, he uses his size to his advantage. And with Luka, he can get to his spots. He's much bigger than you think, especially when you see him in person. He can see over the top of the defense. He's got the great vision and a terrific anticipatory passer. He can just do so many good things. So he doesn't move like some of the guards in the NBA do, but his understanding of the game, the way he's able to use his body and get to his spots and shoot from all angles, it's pretty impressive. But LeBron respects him. Luka grew up loving LeBron. So you've got those two guys in totally different, stages of their career who are able to come together and play and work together. It's pretty sweet. And I think for the Lakers, what's going to make them so tough throughout the course of the postseason is they got three guys who can initiate offense, who can create shots for themselves, and be able to really put pressure on the defense. Austin Reeves, LeBron, and Luka. And that's going to open up the floor for their supporting cast. Now, defensively, I have, major questions on whether or not the Lakers can hold up. They also don't have, a lot of true, bigs who can be impactful, but they do have a lot of long wings. And I guess what it comes down to is, with the Warriors and Lakers, it's going to come down to the star players. If Draymond, Steph, and Jimmy Butler, play up to their capabilities and they're dominant, they're going to be a tough out, and they can give anyone trouble, including Oklahoma City. Same thing with the Lakers. If LeBron is able to, play the way that we've seen throughout long stretches of this season, but most importantly, be impactful defensively and really show a want to on that end of the floor and pick his spots, that's going to be a big difference maker for the Lakers. But LeBron he can do things that Austin Reeves and Luka can't. He can be a disruptive defender. And he's going to be critical in that aspect for the team. He's going to have to find the energy to be able to do those things if the Lakers are going to make a deep run. But Luka will take pressure off of LeBron, handling the ball, setting up teammates, running the offense. It will allow LeBron, I think, at times to, get a little bit of wind back, and then he can dedicate some of that to the defense. So we'll see. But when you have great players playing together, committed to the same goal, and a willingness to share, I think that's helpful. Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy have that, and LeBron has shown a willingness to, really work with Luka to put him in a position where he's comfortable. Because you got to have the ball in Luka's hands. He can't be off ball. You got to have it in Luka's hands. But what LeBron has done is found different ways to impact the game, and that's what great players do. I love guys who can play both ways, who can find different ways to impact the game, and help their team win. Why do we get so excited about, guys like Denny Avdia, Tamani Kamara? Because they're two-way players that can impact the game in a variety of different ways. When we had Joe Cronin on, the one thing he went out of his way to mention about Scoot Henderson was the way he guarded this year. Two-way players. So there you have it. Now, with the Houston Golden State series, I've come to a conclusion. I like the Rockets. I think the Rockets are going to win the series. I think it's going to be a longer series. But I think the Rockets are going to get the job done. I think the Warriors just have too many holes. They're not big enough. They don't rebound well enough. And Houston is the one team that's got enough wings and length and defense to be able to frustrate Steph Curry. And I think their ability to defend Steph is what's going to cause Golden State to sink in the first round. Meaning, Jimmy Butler's great, and he can carry them at times. But the Warriors, they're going to struggle to find a third scorer. And if the Rockets are able to throw multiple looks at Steph and slow him down to where he can't be his usual great self, it's going to put Golden State in a bind. And I think the Rockets, with their defense, their commitment to that end of the floor, the way Ime Udoka pushes them, their youthful energy and their strength and their depth, I think it's going to win out in the series. And I like the Rockets to win. So I think the Rockets will advance. It's not going to be easy. And it's unfortunate because a Lakers-Warriors matchup would be the most appealing in the second round by far, to see Steph and LeBron go head-to-head. And I've learned over time that, when you got a chance to watch greatness or great players going head-to-head, you got to take advantage of the opportunity. I was introduced to Bird and Magic, and those matchups in the finals were amazing. And you've got to enjoy moments like this if we get Steph and LeBron in the second round. But I think the Rockets find a way to get it done. They were really good throughout the course of the regular season. They're young and don't have the experience, but this is not the same Warriors team. That's my whole point. Yes, they have Jimmy Butler. Yes, they have Steph Curry, but this is not the Warriors team that was a part of that dynasty that won 4 championships. It's just not. They're older. They're an aging team. And Steph Curry, as good as he is, the Rockets have enough bodies to make life difficult on him, to where he'll be less efficient and not as impactful. And that's going to make life easier on the Rockets. So I think they're going to win. We'll see how it plays out. My big concern would be their offense. They don't shoot the ball particularly well. They shot it better over the second half of the season, but they're not great offensively. They're not going to execute particularly well on offense in the half court. So that's going to be an issue. But if they rebound well and can give themselves second chance point opportunities, they're going to be okay with that. But the Warriors, they're also a really good defensive team. So I'm just anxious to see how the Rockets' young players will respond to the pressure the Warriors will bring. How do the young guys respond to the pressure of the postseason? It's those unknowns. You just don't know what you're going to get from the Rockets. But I do think that Ime Udoka, with his experience and the fact that he knows how to motivate and the way he works with guys, I think he'll be able to help them get to that rough patch. I think the Lakers will have an easier time with Minnesota. I think Houston and Golden State's going to be a long series, and that's kind of how I see it playing out. But I do know one thing: the NBA wants the Warriors and Lakers badly, and the officiating. I would be stunned if it's not heavily one-sided in favor of the Lakers and the Warriors because of what that series would mean to the NBA. And I know that people say they hate the Warriors and the Lakers. I get that, but wouldn't you want to see LeBron and Steph go head-to-head again in a playoff series? I think that'd be wildly compelling. Denver and the Clippers, another great series. The problem is, I don't think Denver's very good. They've got their own issues. They just fired their head coach, but they do have the MVP in Nikola Jokic. Like, the Clippers should win the series based on how they play going into the at the end of the regular season. But the problem is I don't trust the Clippers. I never have, and I never will. And is Kawhi going to be someone you can lean on and rely on? What about everyone else on the roster? I don't know. It's hard for me, based on years of experience, to buy into the Clippers and what they bring to the table. So I don't know. Denver's a mess right now. They don't have depth. They're not good defensively. So I'm leaning Clippers, but it's hard for me to see the Clippers getting it right and getting the job done, especially when they got to go up against Nikola Jokic. One thing for certain, Jokic may not win the MVP, but I guarantee he's going to have a monster series. Jokic will be awesome. Now, maybe his teammates won't provide enough support. Maybe their defense will continue to falter. But I'm pulling for David Adelman because I like him, and I think he's got a chance to become the head coach in Denver. And I'm excited to see him with this opportunity. It's a big deal. I think I mentioned this before, but I was told from a guy in Denver that part of the reason why they made the move now with Michael Malone, they knew they were going to make the change, but they did it sooner rather than later so they would get a chance to give David Adelman a good look. Let him get a run, see what he can do in the postseason, and see what type of coach he can be as the head man making decisions. So it's a big opportunity for David Adelman to see if he can, get this team on the same page, play better defense, and let's see if they can advance. Because that would set up some terrific second-round matchups. If you had Denver and Oklahoma City, Lakers, Warriors, sign me up for that all day. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Hope you're enjoying this Friday. Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, a couple of football topics I want to hit on here, starting with Colorado. The University of Colorado, the football program, is raising some eyebrows with former players based on what has taken place. They have retired the jerseys of Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders. They skipped ahead of the line and had their numbers retired this past weekend. And Coach Prime came out and said, quote, "Can we start off with just shaking everyone's hands that played here before? Just give them a hug," the Colorado coach said after practice Thursday as the Buffaloes prepare for the spring game on Saturday. They've got to come back for that, right? Let's start with that. That's what I wanted. All right, I want to start with a couple of football things. We'll get to Aaron Rodgers in just a moment, but I want to mention this about Colorado, the Buffaloes, and Coach Prime. And according to the report, the Buffaloes ruffled some feathers of past players and graduates when they announced that Hunter's number 12. All right, a couple of football topics I want to touch on. We'll get to Aaron Rodgers in just a moment and his verbally murdering the New York Jets. But I want to touch on the Colorado Buffaloes and something that just went down because it's got a few ex-players upset. And according to the report, the Colorado Buffaloes have ruffled some feathers of past players and graduates when they announced that Travis Hunter's number 12 and Shadur Sanders' number 2 jerseys would be retired before the spring game. They're only the 5th and 6th players in Colorado's 135-year history to receive that honor. Now, Chad Brown, who won a national championship with Coach McCartney, and he's a Hall of Fame linebacker, said, quote, "If the players from the national championship team have not received such an honor, by default, this action dismisses, diminishes, and for a new generation of CU fans, erase greatness. I would never minimize the impact of number 2 and number 12. They are amazing players, but this timing is poor." And according to the report, the decision to retire numbers is based on the discretion of the Colorado Athletic Administration and the current head coach. So there you have it. Now, Rick George, their athletic director, came out and said, quote, "Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders are both great buffs and exceptional talents who have been tremendous representatives of our program and our university and led our team back to national prominence. Recognizing the accomplishments of a Heisman Trophy winner and record-setting quarterback who ushered in the new era of CU football now does not detract from the accomplishments of the past. Rather, it adds to the rich legacy of CU football that has been passed down over the years by everyone who has worn a CU uniform." Tyler Columbus, who won a Super Bowl with the Broncos, he went to Colorado. He came out and said, quote, "The vitriol from former players regarding CU's retiring number 2 is loud. I think most, including myself, believe he deserves the honor eventually. Bypassing the line, bypassing number 2, Deion figures doesn't make much sense. So many all-time greats that deserve the honor and have waited for their turn. Why so fast? 0 waiting period feels like the first blunder of the Coach Prime era that has upset the alumni." Well, here's where I come out on this. I mean, obviously, Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter mean a lot to the university and the program. And I don't doubt that at all. And both, at some point, are deserving of having their numbers retired. But I also was around when, Bill McCartney took over, and he created a team that won a national championship, nearly went back-to-back. And that was a special time in Colorado football. And they had some all-time greats like Deion Figures, like Darian Hagan, like J.J. Flanagan. They had a number of guys that are deserving. And I'm not a big fan of players jumping ahead or skipping the line or bypassing the process. If there's a process in place, you should probably follow the process. Now, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I'll tell you what's going on here. Coach Prime, it's his program now. They just signed him to a new deal. He's got a lot of power, and Rick George is going to acquiesce to Coach Prime. And because he wants Coach Prime there as long as possible, because Coach Prime has done wonders for the program, not to mention the type of revenue he's brought into the university. It's been huge. So, yeah, we're going to keep Coach Prime happy. And if I'm Rick George, that's probably the right move. Let's keep Coach Prime happy. These 2 players, one is his son, the other is a de facto son. They mean everything to him. He loves Travis Hunter with all his heart. He loves Shadur with all of his heart. These 2 players mean a ton to Coach Prime. And that's why you do it. So I understand why Rick George is allowing this to take place and those two players bypassing the normal process. But I also understand the frustration from guys like Chad Brown or Tyler Columbus, but especially Brown. I respect his voice because he was a part of those teams in the early 90s with Coach McCartney. And, of course, Coach McCartney was the one who resurrected Colorado football to begin with. So not that big of a deal, but I do understand the frustration. Hunter and Sanders are great, but there have been other great players at Colorado that came before them, and they deserve recognition. Just stick with the process. It's going to happen with time anyways. But Rick George wants to make sure that Coach Prime is happy, and I think that's why it went down. It's like, don't worry, Coach Prime. You want those two guys to have their jersey retired before the spring game? We can do that. No problem. And that's all it is. It's the AD making sure that Coach Prime is fully happy so he continues to remain at Colorado and continue to bring in big-time dollars to the program and the school. I mean, it's huge what Coach Prime has done at the university. All right, Aaron Rodgers time. Now, we've talked about this ever since Aaron Rodgers became a Jet a couple of years ago, right? The Jets are a disaster of a franchise, and they have been for most of my life. There was a period in the 80s when they had Kenny O'Brien and Mark Gastineau where they had some good teams. They made the playoffs in 91. They had some, good teams in the late 90s with Vinny Testaverde and Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick when they were coaching the team. Maybe a season with Chad Pennington. But for the most part, they've been at the bottom of the pack. One of the worst teams in the NFL. And a franchise that's laughed at for their lack of, understanding or decision-making. That's just how we know the Jets. They're not good for a reason because they have poor leadership at the top with their owner, and that's where it starts. I'm just surprised that Aaron Rodgers, knowing what he knows, and he's been around the game for a long time, why did he choose the Jets? Why? Why would you go there and choose that? Knowing what you know about the league and the history of the league and the history of that franchise, why? Why choose chaos? Why choose chaos as a partner when you could have gone elsewhere and had a more stable environment with a better franchise that makes better decisions? I don't understand it, but it just goes to show you that we all make mistakes and we all make poor choices. And I think Aaron Rodgers' decision to join the Jets was a mistake because the franchise can't get out of its own way. Well, Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show, and of course, we're all wondering what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to play? Is he going to sign with the Steelers? Is he holding out because he's hoping to get an opportunity with the Vikings? Well, it sounds like he's not real sure what he's going to do yet. Now, I do know he was in, where was it, California, UCLA? I know he was in UCLA recently doing some workouts, and players don't show up at UCLA during the offseason if they have plans to retire. And I think he was there throwing passes to DK Metcalf and getting acquainted. So I think he's going to play. I don't think he's going to walk away from the game. So my guess is he's probably just waiting because he's got leverage right now. The Steelers don't have an answer at quarterback. He knows that. And he also knows that the Vikings are a better option for him because they got more talent. Better coach, more talent, better roster. So if he ends up in Minnesota, that's a great chance for him to go out and compete at a high level and win games. So I understand what Aaron Rodgers is doing. And he doesn't have to make a decision today anyways. The Steelers may want a decision, but Aaron Rodgers is under no pressure to make a decision right now. He can wait and continue to play this out to see what opportunities there are for him. Well, he was on the Pat McAfee show, and it sounds like he's still a little bit uncertain about what he wants to do with his future. But more importantly, he talked about his final meeting with the Jets. And, of course, they have a new head coach now in Aaron Glenn. All right, let me set this up for you. So Aaron Rodgers, he charters a flight, flies back to New York on his own dime to meet with the Jets to discuss their future. He wants to get a chance to meet Aaron Glenn, the new head coach, and find out what their plans are. He thought that maybe they would have a discussion about the roster and some of the players on the roster, that maybe they would pick his brain a bit, have a normal sit-down type of meeting to get a feel where, both parties are at and what direction they want to go. So Aaron starts it by setting up the fact that he's in the Jets facility, and he and Aaron Glenn are in a room together before Aaron Glenn disappears. So here's Aaron Rodgers in a room with Aaron Glenn, And he's on the Pat McAfee show explaining his meeting with the Jets.
We start talking. He runs out of the room. I'm like, that's kind of strange. I was like, then he comes back with the GM. And I'm like, all right. So we sit down in the office, and I think we're going to have this long conversation. I've flown across the country, and 20 seconds in, he goes, I mean, literally, I'm talking to the GM about something, and he leans to the edge of his sheet and goes, so do you want to play football? And I was like, yeah, I'm interested. And he said, we're going a different direction at quarterback. And I said, and I was kind of shocked. Now, not shocked because I didn't think that was a possibility. Listen, of course, they want to move on. That's totally fine. But shocked because I just flew across country. You could have told me this on the phone. If we weren't even going to have a conversation, and this is verbatim exactly how it happened. So I said, huh? And he goes, we just want to know how you want it released, the messaging. And I said, verbatim, I don't give a shit about the message. And I said, why? And then he said, I don't want to be up in front of the room saying something and have guys looking back at you.
Interesting.
And I said, what does that even mean? Are you assuming that I would be in the back of the room during a team meeting undermining what you're saying? I said, you don't know me. And he said, you don't know me. And then I said, exactly, which is why I flew across the country to have a face-to-face meeting with you to talk about my experience with the Jets and to hear your vision for the team. 20 seconds in. What I thought was going to be a couple-hour meeting turned into like a 15-minute meeting, and I walked out of there. But
so at that
yeah,
moment,
that was a strange meeting for
so
sure. There was
obviously-
no me pleading like, please have me on the team. No, I don't know. I don't want any part of that. It was already a debacle in some cases. Listen, that whole situation was crazy, and I think even that was a little rogue by the head coach because I talked to the GM later about it. Christopher Johnson called me. Chris is a fantastic guy. Anybody that's ever met Christopher Johnson says the same thing. He's a phenomenal dude. He's about the right stuff. He's a sweet human being, and I'm thankful that I got to meet him and Doris because their friendship was a big, bright spot in the organization. And there's a lot of great dudes there. There's great players there, great humans. There's great, guys in the equipment room, training room, Carmen and Maddie in the nutrition department, all the strength staff. There's a lot of great dudes there. But there's obviously some things that need to get fixed over there.
All right, there you go. Weird that Aaron Glenn, who's, was a great player, he's been around the league for a long time, takes over as head coach of the Jets. I understand that he might feel a little uncomfortable being new on the job and being around a powerful personality like Aaron Rodgers, but you got to show a little bit more respect to an all-time great like Aaron Rodgers. And I understand there are some people that don't like Aaron Rodgers. The reality is he's still one of the best quarterbacks that have ever played the game. And just handle it a little bit better. It's like, come on, Glenn. What's up with that? But the moral of the story here is this. If you're a big-time quarterback and you've got a chance to go somewhere or force a trade somewhere or sign somewhere as a free agent or whatever, don't sign with the Jets. Find a different franchise. Find a different front office. Find a team that knows what they're doing and one that hasn't been a rudderless ship led by Woody Johnson for quite some time. That's really what it comes down to. When you choose to play for the Jets and when you embrace that organization, these are the type of things that happen. Exactly what happens. It's not good. It didn't go well for B. Favre. It didn't go well for Aaron Rodgers. And I still am convinced he's going to play again next year. There's no way that he's going to end his career with the 2 years with the Jets. 1 year, which he was out the entire season because of an Achilles injury, and the next year, which was just a total disaster. That's got to leave a bad taste in your mouth. Maybe that's why he's being a little more choosy now. Take your time, find the right place, and then go out there and make it right. And remind us of who we remember you as, a great quarterback, not the disaster with the Jets. But that's what happens. The Jets are a mess. What a crap franchise they are. Ask a Jet fan, they'll tell you. So there you have it. Aaron Rodgers on his meeting with Aaron Glenn. We'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. I certainly am, and I'm looking forward to everything that's coming our way. When we come back, I'm going to reset something that's important. Aaron Finchers did a great job. You'll hear it next on the Rip City Drive. This is great. I keep looking at the extended forecast. I'm trying to figure out what the weather's going to be like tomorrow on Saturday. I checked it yesterday, and it was looking like there could be a possibility of rain, but I looked at it again today, and now it looks like it's going to be dry. Maybe about 65 degrees, partly sunny, and that's perfect because I'm going to be up at Wildwood tomorrow, getting a chance to play golf. And my first day out after the Blazers season, the first trip back out, walking the course for the first time, getting my body used to that type of grind, getting up early, the whole thing, it was rough. And, of course, my calories are a little bit lower right now because I'm doing some things and focusing on some things with my workout partner, Luke. So that was a bit of an experience getting through the day with a bit of a restriction. I noticed that my body was, really tired and sore after Monday. I think part of that was I probably should have rested on Monday and played on Tuesday. But, of course, like anyone else, I try to bite off more than I can chew. But, it just takes about a week and a half to get my body, into condition. But I felt much better after my round on Thursday, just my back, my body, everything. Much better. So I'm really excited, man. It's so great to have the season end and have nice weather here. And, 65, 70. I don't mind the temperature, even if it's a little bit cooler, especially in the morning time. If you're going to tee off early, I don't know how some of you like to work. I prefer morning golf much more than afternoon golf. And I like having it be the first thing I do in the morning when I get up. It's very peaceful outside. The birds sound different. The whole thing, the whole setup in the morning, I think is better. But it looks like the weather's going to hold up. It's going to rain on Sunday, but then we get more, nice days coming up next week. So this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. But I haven't been up to Wildwood yet this season, so I'm excited to get up there. It's beautiful up there. A bit more of a drive, but I like that ride up Highway 30 and getting a chance to get up there. So anyways, that's where my mind is at. But the forecast, in case you're wondering, we're going to have a nice day on Saturday. It looks like we're going to have rain on Sunday. And then next week, Monday through all the way till Saturday, it looks like we're going to avoid rain. And we're going to have temperatures in the mid to upper 60s into the low 70s throughout the course of the week. That is what I'm talking about. And then if I go out to the 27th, 28th, and 29th, all the way to the 30th, so it looks like one day with rain. Of course, these forecasts can change all the time, but it's looking good. It's looking real good. All right, so we got a lot of good things going on. NBA playoffs will kick off tomorrow. I'm excited about a variety of different series and potential matchups as the playoffs continue. So I'm looking forward to that. We got the NFL draft coming up next week. So a lot of good things on tap. Now, what I want to do is Aaron Fentress with the Oregonian, he joined the show earlier this week. And we talked about all things Trailblazers. We kind of did a, season-ending interview with Aaron Fentress to get his take on, where the team is at, what they need to do next, his thoughts on the extensions for both Joe Cronin and Chauncey Billups. But the main reason I had him on was he did a lot of legwork a few years ago when Coach Billups was originally hired, and there were concerns locally from some members of the press and some Trailblazer fans due to the sexual misconduct allegations that took place basically 30 years ago. And I was surprised at the outrage. You got to keep in mind that, Chauncey Billups was never arrested, never indicted, never convicted, none of that. Now, he was a part of a civil case where he settled out of court. But as you know, people settle for a variety of different reasons, and it's not an indication of guilt. So we got to keep that in mind. But the reason why I had Aaron on is, I had put out, some messages on social media about Coach Billups once he got his extension done on Sunday morning, because I thought it was a good move. And I'm a big fan of Coach Billups. Had a chance to interact with him. He answers questions openly. He's pretty transparent for a coach. I think part of that's just because he's pretty comfortable being in his own skin because he's Chauncey Billups. But I really like the guy. I think he's done a really good job this year as coach in terms of developing the talent and getting them to buy in and play defense. The numbers would prove that, especially over the second half of the season from game 41 on. But I do like him. And I was always a fan of his. And I've got family and friends in Colorado who absolutely adore Coach Billups. He's a legend in the Rocky Mountains. But I wanted to have Aaron on because he's the one that did the legwork, reached out to the DA who was on the case, and he knows all the details and goes through everything. And I think this is good for those of you who are wondering, what the allegations were about, how it went down, how Coach Billups' names was involved in the original case. Aaron's going to lay it out. And so he did so on the show, and I want you to hear this portion of the discussion because Aaron lays it out just so you know. Instead of, hearsay, let's just get the details and the facts as we know it. And Finchers did the legwork on that, and I want you to hear this because I think it's really good. But Aaron takes off and starts from the beginning and works his way through bit by bit.
I did a pretty lengthy story on it where I talked to the district attorney who oversaw the investigation of the case. And we went back and forth for like 2 weeks because he was shocked that it was a thing. That was the first thing he said to me. He goes, I cannot believe this is a thing. We closed this up in 1998. How is this still a thing? And so he was perplexed. So he had to sort of go back into his memory banks. He even reached out and talked to some investigators who he still knew who were around and got some other information. And then that's why we had like 5 or 6 conversations over the course of 2 weeks to try and sort of really nail down. But at the end of the day, people have to understand about that case that Chauncey Billups was never charged, never arrested, never indicted, never prosecuted, and clearly never convicted. The case involving his portion was dropped. They believed 100% that he and Ron Mercer had nothing to do with the sexual assault of Jane Doe. They believed Jane Doe was sexually assaulted. And that's where the balance comes in, right? Because a lot of people say believe victims, et cetera, et cetera. Why would she lie? Most people don't lie in these types of situations. Well, she's not necessarily, it's not about that because everyone believes raped. It just wasn't by Billups and Mercer. And so later, though, there was a lawsuit, and a lot of people say, well, Chauncey paid her off, right, to make the charges go away. No, there were never charges, right? The criminal investigation was completed with those two being cleared to the point where the DA went to Rick Pitino, Boston Celtics coach, and warned him about the people Antoine Walker was hanging around with because they believed that Antoine Walker's buddies from Chicago raped the woman, not Billups and Mercer. So that's how much they were convinced it wasn't them because they went to Pitino not to say, man, Mercer and Billups, those are bad dudes. We can't prove anything. No, they went and said, look, Antoine Walker's hanging out with some clowns from Chicago who's going to get him in trouble. We believe they did this, but we believe Billups and Mercer were innocent. So anyway, in the civil suit, though, and this is a key part of the entire case, and it's something a lot of people kind of want to ignore or whatever, but in the civil suit, it says, based upon information and belief, the other 2 men in the room were Billups and Mercer, but she never ID'd them. She just knew there was 2 other guys, along with Michael Irvin, not the Michael Irvin from the Dallas Cowboys, but Walker's friend, right? I asked, and I remember reading that. I'm like, based upon information and belief, that was weird because it didn't say that about Irvin. It said Irvin flat out did X, Y, Z. So I Googled it, and that's a term people use to give them an out. And so you can't be accused of falsely accusing someone of anything. Because it's based upon information and belief, I think this happened. Based upon information and belief, I think Chad stole my car. Mm-hmm. Oh, turns out Chad was even in town. Oh, you can't sue me because I said based upon this. That's basically what it is. So I asked the DA about that, and he said, oh, it means she didn't know. He flat out told me that during the investigation, the criminal investigation, she did not know, and she never even named Billups and Mercer because she didn't know at all who the guys were, period. And that's the case right there, right? That's the case. She did not know, but in the civil suit, based upon information, oh, it was Billups and Mercer. Well, clearly you're naming Billups and Mercer because they got what?
Money.
Now, here's my thing. She was raped. And as far as I'm concerned, every dude that was with her that night holds some responsibility for either A, they were involved in the rape, or B, they didn't protect her. And that includes Antoine for not protecting her from his friends. And maybe to some extent, and Chauncey and Mercer were said to not even be at the apartment, they were at their own place. right? And there was, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're necessarily at fault for anything these other guys did, but the bottom line is she was violated. And so to me, she deserves some kind of compensation. Should she have gotten it from Billups and Mercer? I don't know. People can decide that all they want, but the bottom line is she filed a lawsuit and named those two. Now, this thing went on for a couple of years. A lot of people, when people say, oh, he bought her off, that's why she didn't. No, the criminal investigation was over 2 years before the case was settled. But at the end of the day, what they decided was, is it worth it to go into a civil trial to deal with the headache of this when you can reach a settlement and just make it go away? And that was the decision they made. And quite frankly, it was probably the smart decision in the long run. But here's the deal with Portland. Let me just make this clear to you. Okay. It was over. Chauncey Billups went on to have a Hall of Fame basketball career, won a title, worked on ESPN for 7 years, was coaching with the Clippers, had been offered a job in Cleveland, and then he's going to be the head coach in Portland, and all of a sudden he's guilty of rape from 27 years ago, in case he was cleared from. Because in Portland, for whatever reason, a lot of people decided, nope, he was accused of it, he must be guilty. And then you had people crying about, oh, we need to interview her. We need to reach out to her and find her, which was one of the most arrogant points of view anyone discussed with this case. Why would this woman, who 27 years ago had been brutally sexually assaulted, want to talk about it for Portland fans? State of mind. It's so egregiously ridiculous to think that she would talk about it. Plus, she did have a non-disclosure anyway. Of course, when you have a settlement, you're going to have that. But to think that anyone who wants to relive what happened with them to satisfy basketball fans is just nuts. And of course, she didn't. Now, what the Blazers screwed up is that in their investigation, right, they didn't reach out to the woman's attorney. And I told people with the Blazers, I was like, y'all, you messed that up. And LPB called them out on it, right, with their article. I was like, y'all messed up. Check the box. We checked the box. Yeah, one of our news side reporters reached out to the attorney. I reached out to her 3 times. I reached out to her after our other reporter failed. And then I tried again. And then when I had my story done, after talking to the DA, I reached out again and said, hey, do you want to respond to any of this? So we tried 4 times, and the Blazers didn't try once. But they also knew she wasn't and shouldn't talk about it. So it just became a mess. But at the end of the day, you're innocent until proven guilty, man. And facts have to matter. And I was raised as a news reporter. I covered crime. I've covered homicides, fatal fires, fatal car accidents, prostitution stings, sexual assault cases, rape cases, murder, suicides, almost everything under the sun. I had dozens upon dozens of conversations with and interviews with members of law enforcement, from judges, the prosecutors, defense attorneys. I've been to the homes of people who've been murdered. I've been to the homes of people who committed manslaughter to try and get interviews. Like, I've been deep in that world, and facts have to matter. And the minute that facts don't matter in criminal cases, we've just lost all semblance of any continuity in our society, because then everyone was just running around just accusing anyone of anything. And this was just a situation where this thing was settled and cleared, and then some people in Portland decided to make it more than it was, and still to this day they want to believe he's guilty when, again, never identified criminally. Identified in the civil suit, but never identified criminally, arrested, charged, indicted, prosecuted, or convicted. People need to let it go.
Yeah. And you know as well as I do, Aaron, that people settle matters out of court for a variety of different reasons. It doesn't mean that you're admitting any type of guilt in the process, right? But people assume, well, you settled, so you must be guilty. That's not true. That's absurd.
Right. One of the problems that arises is that if you're within the vicinity of what happened, right, it can come down to a he say, she say case, right?
Yep.
And in civil court, that can get messy, and it becomes a situation where it's just a no-win situation for the defendant, because, there's if there's evidence, you would have been arrested, right?
Yep.
There's not enough evidence to arrest you or convict you. So if it's a civil case, there might be some flimsy circumstantial stuff here and there or something like that. But if you weren't even arrested or charged or indicted, then the evidence was weak. So sometimes it's just best to avoid a trial and that being out in the public sphere, because that's going to take 2 years. You're going to go through depositions. You're going to go through. It's going to be like had Chauncey Billups and Mercer forced that thing to trial right? That would be on ESPN off and on for a year and a half at least.
Yep.
Well, why do you want that? You have the money. Sometimes you just got to write a check and move on. And at the end of the day, it's better for you. And it's a weird situation, and a lot of people do it in all walks of life, especially entertainers. But, sometimes it's just a smart legal play for you and for your career to just make it go away.
Yeah.
But like I said, dude, and I've said this before, I don't begrudge her for seeking some kind of compensation, because what happened to her, based on what the DA was telling me, was absolutely effed up.
Oh, it's horrible.
But the problem is she couldn't ID anyone to the point where they couldn't really prosecute. They would have never won the case. And so that's why they couldn't pursue it against Walker's friends.
And so Neil Olshey's big mistake, aside from, maybe his arrogance in the situation, is the fact that they didn't make an effort to reach out to Jane Doe's attorney.
Well, it's just checking the box.
Yeah, check the box.
It's checking the box. It's like, we're in my business, as a journalist, we know sometimes there's a 99.9% chance no one's going to talk.
Yeah, and you probably knew that in this situation too. You knew that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, it would be like I said, it would be absolutely asinine for her to talk about it. Think about this part of it for her. For all we know, or all anyone important knew, okay, I mean, aside the fact that she wouldn't want to talk about something like that happened to her, maybe none of her friends know.
Yeah.
Because, again, this is a lifetime ago. Maybe no one she's friends with, no one she works with. Maybe she's married and her husband doesn't even know, or at least her kids don't even know. It's just something she's buried in the past and moved on, but she's supposed to bring it back up.
Yeah.
For Blazers fans.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right, and it's just it's ridiculous. Or to try and talk the Blazers into not bringing him on as coach. Well, she didn't do that to try and keep him off ESPN. She didn't do that to try and keep him out of Denver or Detroit or out of the NBA. So why the whole thing was just ludicrous. But like I said, at the end of the day, she was definitely violated. It just, according to the police and the prosecutor's office, it just was not Billups and it was not Mercer.
Aaron Fentress, Oregonian, I appreciate, my friend. That was exactly what I was looking for. You just gave a great detailed response to the nonsense out there. That's awesome. Good work.
I want to point out one thing, though. When this all went down, a lot of people were talking about it, right? And a lot of people were speculating, and there was a whole big thing about when Neil said, that's proprietary, which it was proprietary. Had Neil Olshey come out and said, this is why we believe Billups is innocent, he would have been accused of victim bashing.
Yes. Right.
The only way to say Billups is innocent is to say that she's lying in the civil suit. So how do you do that delicately? You can't. There's no way to do it. So the way they handle it, aside from checking the boxes, was probably the right way to handle it. But, dude, I wrote that article. It's 2,500 words. With the district attorney, we did a deep dive into that entire case. I got not one request to talk about it, even though everyone in town was talking about it. And that told me a lot about some people in this town. When it was something to talk about controversial and stick it to Neil Olshey and to speculate if this guy was guilty of this sex crime, everyone wanted to talk about it. But when you have a big story on the major publication in the state with the headline saying the DA is detailing exactly why he's innocent, crickets. And it's not like people don't know who I am and don't have my number. No one wanted to talk about that part. And I thought that was very telling about some people in this town.
All right, there you go. There's Aaron Fentress. I appreciate his breakdown, and I was thankfully had time to come on the show to be able to express that. Some of you know the deal and you know exactly the details of the case and everything, but for those who don't, I just wanted to provide that for you so you have the background and have better understanding, which I think is nice. But in regard to the Trailblazers, I'm just glad that Billups and Cronin are both locked in, and now they can just focus strictly on what's next. The draft lottery, continuing to scout, continuing to scour the league to see what opportunities are going to become available this summer so they can utilize all their tools to continue to move this team forward. And that's what I'm excited about. I mean, we saw the development this year. We saw them engage in playing defense. You know, if they're able to add another terrific player from the draft, and then they're able to make some deals with the veteran pieces that eventually are going to be moved out, and they can continue to add the young talent that they've been looking for, guys like Denny Avdia that we saw last year, it's going to be a lot of fun next year because now we know that, you know, moving forward, it's not going to be about lottery position. It's going to be about winning and doing everything you can to win and put yourself in the best position to become a playoff contender. And because that's what we're used to here in Portland. And the playoffs are fun. You know, I'm envious of the fan bases. They're going to be sitting back watching their team play basketball starting tomorrow. But I'm excited about the series and I'm looking forward to some of the matchups, especially with this Houston Golden State. I'm fascinated by this matchup. Youth against experience. Defense against Steph Curry. Like, it's going to be fun to see how that shakes out, how it plays out, and how things continue to develop. And that is that. I'll give you my predictions for how I see some of these series going down. We'll get to that. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. Chad doing Rip City Drive here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. If you haven't seen it, or if you're younger and maybe this is before your time, I'd recommend going to YouTube to check it out. I was thinking last night when I was thinking about the upcoming playoffs, I was going back in my mind and thinking about, some of the best playoff series and best NBA finals I've seen in my lifetime. And there are several examples, but I was trying to think of like individual performances that really stood out. And there were two that came to mind. Obviously, Michael Jordan, game one of the 92 finals against the Trailblazers. He scored 35 points in the first half, and he was 6 of 10 from three-point range for the game. Hit 6 threes in the first half. It was a ridiculous shooting display, and the Bulls routed the Blazers in game one. We're all familiar with that, but MJ was unreal in that first half of game one of the 92 finals. But I still think, without question, the best moment, individual performance I've ever seen in the NBA Finals. Go back to 1988, Pistons and Lakers, and it was kind of an upset for NBA fans because Detroit got past Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. So no Celtics, no Lakers, no Larry against Magic. It was the upstart Detroit Pistons with their defense and their youth and their energy, and it was the start of the Bad Boy Pistons. This is when they started to emerge. And I would say that it's probably my favorite NBA Finals. It was a 7-game classic. Detroit won the first game in L.A. Lakers bounced back to win games 2 and 3. The Pistons blew out the Lakers in games 4 and 5. And then they went back to L.A. for 2 classic games in game 6 and game 7. Game 6 was decided by a point, and game 7 was decided by 3 points. But the performance I'm referring to, and the game's on YouTube, and they show it on NBA TV sometimes for their classic games. But game 6, third quarter, Isaiah Thomas put on a performance that I've never seen anything like it. Not since. There's been some great performances, but what Isaiah Thomas did for the Pistons was unreal. So in the quarter, the Pistons started out the third, they were down, and Isaiah Thomas started to get hot, and he started to heat up. And Isaiah Thomas was one of those shooters where he was streaky, and when he would get hot, he would get white hot, and he could hit anything. And what happened is he started off the third, in a good rhythm, making some buckets. And about, midway through the quarter or so, he came down on top of someone's foot and ripped up his ankle. And he was in agony. He's like lying on the baseline. The trainers out there, you could see that he was in just absolute pain. But he left the game, but then came back in. He was hobbling, but it's almost like the injury took his offensive game up to another level. And he scored. There was a stretch there in the third where he scored 11 of the final 15 points for the Pistons in the quarter. Isaiah Thomas in the period, 25 points. He scored 25 points in the third on a bad ankle and finished the game with 43 points and 8 assists. Now, the Lakers won the game because of a phantom call on Bill Laimbeer, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was able to hit a couple of free throws. The Pistons took a late 102-99 lead, but the Lakers got a bucket from Byron Scott and a couple of free throws from Kareem to seal it. But that third quarter performance was amazing. Isaiah Thomas was hobbling down the floor on the fast break to score at the rim. He hit a ridiculous shot off the window where he got tripped up by Michael Cooper. He was hitting shots in the lane. He finished off the quarter by hitting a ridiculous fadeaway from the corner. And the Pistons took a lead into the fourth quarter. But that right there, if you have a chance, you should go back and watch the game on YouTube. That performance by Isaiah Thomas was amazing. Now, the Pistons, they earned the bad boy reputation for a reason. They were dirty. They would look to maul you. They wanted to muck up the game, and they had a variety of different guys who could do it. They were a tough, tough team. Bill Laimbeer was cheap and dirty, but tough. Rick Mahorn was a bruiser. They had James Edwards on the bench. Vinnie Johnson, who's one of the more physical point guards in the history of the game, the microwave. And then Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, one of the best backcourts of all time. And not to mention the young guns off the bench with the length, John Sally and Dennis Rodman. And, Chuck Daly used to rave about John Sally and Dennis Rodman and what they would bring to the practices. The energy, the defense, the atmosphere. But that was a unique team with a lot of long guys and different guys who could do it. And that's the year where they still had Adrian Dantley before they had traded for Mark Aguirre. So they were a really good team. It was weird. That was the year where the Pistons probably had the better team and probably should have won the finals. And then the next year, the Lakers probably had the better team, but the Pistons won their first championship, their first of back-to-back titles as bad boys. But that year when the Lakers got to the finals, Byron Scott had popped a hamstring, and then Magic popped a hamstring, and then without Magic and Scott, they had nothing. And the Pistons were able to sweep them out in 4 games. But the Lakers were really good that year. So, I don't know. It's just weird how some of those things play out. But go back and watch it. Isaiah Thomas was small, 6'1", but one of the toughest dudes in the history of the league. He was tough. And I've never seen a guy hobbling around like that, able to go out there and play. And then I think between Game 6 and Game 7, he spent time in the hospital. They did different treatments with I don't know, what like some type of shock or electroshock treatments. I forgot exactly what they called it. Obviously, the technology not the same back then, but Isaiah Thomas went, he tried to do everything he could to make it happen. But, he was obviously slowed down in that Game 7, but the Pistons made a late charge in that game to get back in the series. But I would say that the 88 finals is probably my favorite. Back then when I was younger and I was still in school, I lived for those type of things. And the NBA finals is a big deal. So my mom, she'd always take me to the store and let me pick out all the different type of snacks that I wanted for the game, like chips, dips, all the things you could imagine. My mom would set up like a smorgasbord for me, and I could sit and watch the games. And then what I did back in the day with all of my sporting events is that I would record the games on VHS tape so I could go back and watch them. So a lot of those games that I grew up watching, on TV, I recorded them all on VHS, and I would just watch them over and over and over again. I loved it. I couldn't get enough. And I've still got boxes in storage filled to the brim with VHS tapes from different Bronco games. I recorded every one of the 98 finals, MJ's last finals with the Bulls. I've got all of those on VHS tape. I've been telling myself that I'm going to go back at some point and, transfer all of my games to like DVD or digitize them. But, it's like a lot of things. It's like I could do that, but YouTube has made it so nice because pretty much everything I have is available on YouTube. I don't know who the geniuses are that keep loading up some of these old games on YouTube, but God bless them. Because I'm able to go back and pull up games I haven't seen in years and rewatch them. I love that. But I would say the 88 finals is up there. 87 finals is important to me, even though the Lakers won in 6 over the Celtics, because that was kind of my initiation into the NBA and the NBA playoffs. And I would say the Game 4 of the 87 finals, the Magic hook shot, and then Bird with the late 3, and then missed a shot from the corner at the buzzer that would have won the game. Like, that Game 4 was awesome. That was a terrific basketball game. I was all about that. I was upset that Bird got beat, but the Lakers were really tough that year. So 87 finals, great. 88 finals were terrific. And the other finals that jump out, the 2010 finals with Boston and L.A. and Kobe getting a chance to go back-to-back, I thought that was a terrific series, a fantastic series. I love the 94 finals with the Knicks and Rockets. The Knicks took a 3-2 lead back to Houston, and the Rockets were able to come back and get the job done. I thought that was a great series. I enjoyed watching John Starks go ice cold, but that playoff run that the Rockets had was amazing because, those 2 years, because Hakeem Olajuwon was unreal. I mean, he was a sick, sick man, very sick. And I enjoyed, watching Kobe and Shaq, but, their finals runs in that first three-peat that they had, who'd they play? Indiana, and then they took on Philadelphia, and then the Nets. Those weren't competitive series like the ones that I was exposed to. So I don't know, but YouTube's great. I just love going back to watch those games. But I would say that that performance by Isaiah, Game 6, third quarter, ripped up ankle, 25 points in the period, finished with 43. And the game ended by a point. And Kareem Cooley hit 2 free throws to, put the Lakers on top, and they got the win. That was a great, great basketball game. It was awesome. I mean, really good. And the Pistons were, they were game. No one knew what to expect, with the Pistons in. Everyone expected Boston, and yet the Pistons got in there and, they gave them a good run for their money. And that's back when the Pistons played their home games at the Silverdome. Bizarre to see, NBA basketball games played in an NFL stadium, but that's the way it was. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rip City Drive. For those of you who missed it, you're going to get a chance to hear my conversation with Joe Cronin next hour. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, one thing I want to touch on right now, NBA expansion. Commissioner Silver was on the Pat McAfee show and talked about the NBA's plans for potential expansion in the near future. And I thought he made some really good points. Now, the reason why this is important to me is, the two cities that have been mentioned the most when it comes to NBA expansion is Seattle and Las Vegas. And I do believe, based on what I've been told, that when the NBA does expand, that Seattle and Las Vegas are going to get two teams. Now, the reason why that's good for the Trailblazers, number one, it would bring back the I-5 rivalry. I think it's really good to have regional battles in sports. The Sonics and Trailblazers going head-to-head for years was awesome. It's great to have, another NBA team that's close. You can make trips up north to go check out a game when your team's on the road. You've got a natural rivalry because you've got Seattle and Portland who are natural rivals. So it just makes a lot of sense. But also having a team in Las Vegas, this could be a situation where the Trailblazers maybe get some easier road trips because they're tucked away in the Northwest and end up having to fly usually year after year after year as much as anyone else in the league to accomplish their road trips. So I'm interested in that. But most importantly, the I-5 rivalry. Seattle irritates me because I live here and I don't like being lumped in with Seattle, which we often are. And Seattle and Portland are two unique places with different personalities, different areas, and they're not the same. And they shouldn't be lumped in together. I think you guys understand that. But Commissioner Silver talked about expansion, and he did bring up one concern, and I would say it's my biggest concern, and I'll talk about that after we hear from Commissioner Silver on the Pat McAfee show.
In terms of expansion, we try not to look at it every year just because we don't want to be too much of a distraction. What I've been saying for the last several years, we knew we needed to get a new collective bargaining agreement done. We did. We needed a new media deal to get done, and Pat referenced that before. We did that. We've locked in our television rights for 11 years. And part of the reason you want to know what your television deal is because you now have new partners. You're going from dividing up the money in terms of 30 teams and those players to, let's say, if we expanded by 2 teams to 32. So you want to know what those economics are. So now that those things are done, we're just beginning a process internally at the league of exploring the opportunity to expand. I will say sometimes on the outside, it looks like a no-brainer because it seems like you're printing money to expand. But again, as I said, you're really selling equity in the league. You have 30 teams that own the league, and now you're saying we're going to have 32 teams that own the league. So you're diluting the economic interest of all the 30 teams, and you're also potentially diluting the talent because, as with 450 players plus some in the NBA, but roughly 450 players, there's even among those, the greatest in the world, there's only so many difference makers. And then how are those players going to be distributed around the league? That's a lot of what we spend time on in collective bargaining agreement is the right distribution of players. And so we're looking hard at it. We're sort of modeling it, for lack of better terms, in the league office. Look, there's no doubt there's been interest in Las Vegas. Seattle, I've been very public about it, that it was a market that was fantastic for the league, that we left at the time for understandable reasons, but there's no doubt that there continues to be enormous passion in that market for the NBA. So we're looking at those markets and others. I think as we get into the summer, we'll get into a more formal process of how we go about doing it. I don't want to say it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to expand, but I also think over time, organizations tend to grow. And I look at the success of those markets for other, major league teams now. And, so it's easy to just present a scenario where you can see it working successfully for the league. But I don't want to jump the gun here. We have the 30 existing teams who all need to weigh in on this process and also at some point need to have direct conversations with the people who are interested in those teams. It's premature to do that right now. That's what, we've been contacted by groups who are saying we have interest in potentially being part of expansion, not just in those cities, but others. And we've sort of said, we're not quite ready yet, but again, we will go through a very, methodical approach to it and do it very cautiously, but we'll continue to look at it.
The one thing that Commissioner Silver talked about that I would say is my biggest concern is the watering down of talent in the NBA. If you had two more teams, that's two more teams that you got to supply with players. And that means you've got the talent spread around even more. And obviously it's star power that kind of, makes everything go. We all care about the stars. That's why we're excited about the potential matchup of LeBron and Steph Curry in the NBA playoffs in the second round this year. But I think that's a valid concern. Will there be enough players, enough high-level players that are continuing to come up through the ranks, either through the G League, college basketball, or overseas to where there can be enough star power to fill 32 teams? It's a valid question, and I would say that's my biggest concern. But, props to Commissioner Silver, as critical as I am of him, for how he's very soft on the players, his handling of multiple things. He did something I didn't think was possible. He got a really sweet TV deal at a time when the market was tough, the ratings were down, but he got it done. He nailed it. And now the league is in a position with a new CBA, a new TV deal to now go out and look at expansion. And from my understanding, I think the Godfather told me this, but NBA owners love the idea of expansion because I forgot what the fee is, but it cost a small fortune to join the league. And, of course, that money is shared with the owners. They love that type of cash, big-time cash. All right, NBA playoffs are coming up tomorrow, and it's going to kick off at 10 a.m. on ESPN. I'll just give you my predictions for the first round series. The first game is going to be the Bucks at the Pacers. Now, we don't know what the status of Damian Lillard is and when he's going to, return, if he's going to be able to be a part of this series at some point. We just know that he's off blood thinners. They have solved the deep vein thrombosis, and that's very good news. But I like the Pacers in this series. They're favored in game one by 5.5. I think the Pacers are able to win this series probably in 5 games, and they will move on. The Bucks just don't have enough. I think the Pacers advance in 5. The second game tomorrow will be at 12:30 on ESPN. It's the Clippers and Nuggets, my second favorite of all the first-round matchups. Now, the Clippers, they've got versatility. They've got Kawhi Leonard. They've got like 4 players who can score 20 or more. They can hit you in a bunch of different ways. But I don't trust the Clippers, and I don't put a lot of stock in teams that finish the regular season on a high note because, who are they playing? Are they playing teams that were trying to tank and shut it down and focus on Cooper Flagg? I just don't trust the Clippers at all. And this, current group has not got it done. And will Kawhi Leonard be available and be able to perform at a high level for the entire series? I don't know. They're a weird squad. They got talent. They're going to be a tough matchup. My mind is telling me to kind of lean in that direction, but I'll take Denver. I think Denver wins a long series, probably in 7. I just think Nikola Jokic is going to be so great that he'll find a way to get the job done. I don't trust Denver either. They just fire their coach. They don't play good defense. They've got a ton of issues, but I think they'll find a way to get it done. And I do like their top line talent in the starting lineup. And they'll be a little bit fresher here in the first round. But Aaron Gordon's playing terrific basketball. He's really turned it on with his offensive game and his ability to shoot. And obviously, Jokic makes everyone around him better. But this is a great series. It's going to be highly competitive. I think it's going to go 7 games. And because of that, I like Denver at home in a Game 7 to win and advance. And that could potentially set us up with 2 amazing second-round matchups in the Western Conference. At 3 o'clock on ESPN, the Pistons at the Knicks. A very good matchup. The Knicks are a great team because they defend. You can tell they enjoy playing together. Tom Thibodeau gets a lot from that group, but I like a lot of the guys on their roster, and I like the way they compete. They play hard. Like that team, you can tell they love to play basketball, and they get after it. So I like the Knicks in this series, and I think the Knicks win the series in 5. But I'm not trying to discredit the Pistons. They're one of the great stories in the NBA this year. Worst team in the NBA last year, 44 wins this year. Now they're a part of the postseason. But they're younger. They don't have the experience. And the Knicks, look, man, there are teams they don't match up well with, like Boston. But the Knicks are one of those teams where if you're young and you don't have playoff experience and you go up against a team like that wants to bust you in the mouth and will get after it for 48 minutes, the Pistons are going to be in for a rude awakening. So I like the Knicks in 5. In the other series, 5:30, ABC on Saturday, Timberwolves and Lakers. Timberwolves and Lakers. I like this matchup. I think the Lakers have the advantage because they got 3 guys who can initiate the offense. They have 3 guys who can create for themselves, and they got Luka and LeBron. And the Timberwolves have had their issues throughout the course of the year. I just don't think the Timberwolves are going to have enough firepower. They will be able to create issues because they got a lot of length, and they've got some very good defenders that will create some problems for them. But I just think the Lakers are going to be able to get the job done and move on. I like the Lakers in 5. Lakers move on and await the winner of the Rockets and Warriors series. But the Timberwolves are a great draw for the Lakers, and the Lakers are in a very good part of the bracket to where they got a chance to make it to the Western Conference Final. I know it pains me to say that, but it's just flat out the truth. Their draw in the playoffs are great. Now on Sunday, I'll just take the Thunder. Thunder advance into the second round. They play 10 a.m. on Sunday morning at 12:30 on ABC. It's Game 1, Magic and Celtics. I'll take the Celtics, and more than likely, it's going to be a short series. I'll take the Celtics in 4 or 5. Maybe the Magic get a game, but I think the Celtics are going to show us what they're all about. They're going to crank up the intensity. They've got the best team. They're the defending champs. They defend. They spread the floor. They got multiple shooters. And as long as Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum stay healthy, they're just too much. So Celtics in a short series, 4 or 5 games over Orlando. The Cavaliers will move on into round number 2. These 1-8 matchups are a joke this year. And then the best series, I think, in the first round, 6:30 tip on TNT, Warriors and Rockets. Now, I told you I've had internal struggle on this because I understand what the Rockets don't have. They don't have experience. They don't have great shooters. And that's going to be an issue. But what they do have is length, athleticism, and a lot of energy. And Ime Udoka's got this team playing really hard. They're going to cause a lot of problems for Golden State. I mentioned my reservations about the Rockets. They don't shoot the ball particularly well. The Warriors are they're not as good defensively as the Rockets, but they're close. And if the Rockets struggle throughout the series on offense, they're going to have a hard time winning it. But I think they'll find enough. The one thing I'm banking on is this. The Rockets have multiple guys, including Amon Thompson, who defends Steph Curry very well. They're going to be able to put pressure on him. And I think what they'll do is they will neutralize Curry to a degree, And then that's going to put an inordinate amount of stress on Jimmy Butler. And keep in mind, the Warriors are an aging roster, and I don't see a third guy. We talked with Evan Giddings from 95.7 The Game down in San Francisco. He thinks that maybe Brandon Pajinski could be that third scorer. They don't really have a third scorer, and I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Steph and Jimmy, and the Rockets will be able to limit one of those guys. So I'll take the young upstart Rockets because of their rebounding, their defense, and they'll be able to control and play more at the tempo that they want, which I think is good. And for the Warriors, they better be careful. We know they're really loose with the basketball and the way they approach things, but they got to tighten things up because the Rockets bring the pressure. But this series is going to be a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And we're going to find out in a couple of series this year, or a couple of teams this year, what that youth and lack of playoff experience means. What does it mean for Oklahoma City? What does it mean for the Houston Rockets? But I'll take the Rockets in a long series, 7 games. I think it's going to be a classic. I can't wait. So there you have it. That's my take on that. We'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. If you missed my conversation with Joe Cronin, you're going to hear from him next. He covers the young guys. We talk about the offseason. We talk about his incredible journey from 2006 up until now with the organization. Trailblazers General Manager Joe Cronin coming up next on the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. All right, Rip City Drive, Chad doing. I wanted to make sure I hit this again in case you missed it. Joe Cronin, Trailblazers general manager, joined the show earlier this week, and we covered all the topics. The season that we saw, the improvement in the second half of the season, the work of Coach Billups and the way that his players respond to him. And I even asked him about each of the 5 young guys, Scoot, Shaden, Donovan Clingan, Tamani Kamara, and Denny Avdia. So we hit everything. I think it's a great conversation. But most importantly, you get a chance to learn about Joe's background and where he came from. He wasn't handed the job. He started as an intern with the team back in 2006, and he provided for himself by charging up a bunch of things on credit cards: rent, living expenses, food, you name it. He was just trying to find a way to get involved in the game of basketball, and he worked his tail off, and eventually he was able to parlay that into general manager for the Portland Trailblazers. I love his story, and I think Joe has done a heck of a job, and he's done a great job of acquiring young talent, and now we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, where these 5 young guys are now the future of this team. And the good thing is we got the draft coming up this summer, and he's got some other tools to work with to continue to reshape the roster in the image that he wants and the type of players that Coach Billups wants on his squad, so they can go out there and focus on winning, which is terrific. So enjoy this. I start out by congratulating him on his contract extension.
Hey, Chad, thank you for having me, and thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. Trailblazers, we're taking pretty good steps here, and it's nice to be a part of this at least a little bit longer.
Well, I know what it's like for me when my boss sits down with me and he offers me a contract extension. It feels good just from the standpoint of, they appreciate some of the work you're doing. And I know for you, you jumped in at a time of, chaos, and to be able to work through that and then have them come to you and say, hey, we like what you're doing, we want it to continue. I would imagine to have that type of support from ownership is nice.
For sure. It's great to feel that level of support, and it's great to see, all of us get, rewarded for the hard work that we're putting in and for the solid results that we think we're starting to see.
Yeah, it's terrific. Joe Cronin is with us here on the Rip City Drive. I guess first off, just your thoughts on the season from year to year to go plus 14 in wins. How much of a surprise was that to you, especially with the surge in the second half?
Was really happy to see the defensive improvement from the first half of the year to the second half of the year. It's been a big point of emphasis in ours in, the players we've acquired, but also in the style of play we're trying to implement. So to see our group get really connected and really start to thrive on that defensive side of the ball, I think that really propelled our team as a whole and, took us to this, next phase of what we hope to be a successful rebuild.
Hey, Joe, how do you explain the defensive improvement? I think in the first half of the season, games 1-41, I think you guys were like 27th or 28th in the league in defensive efficiency. But from games 41 up until the end, we're talking about top 5 defense, which is a large sample size. Is that just a matter of having continuity with guys playing together? Is it the development of the players? Like, what is the key to that turnaround there defensively?
And I think it's all of the above. I think definitely the group became more and more connected as the season and seasons went along. With that, we also saw a lot of player development occur, and these young guys are getting better and better and starting to come into their own and find their identity and learn what it takes on a nightly basis to, play winning basketball, specifically on the defensive side of the floor. And I think another big part of it is Chauncey and his staff really hit their stride, not just in implementing their style of play, and their defensive schemes, but also in how they were able to challenge our guys and get them to respond and hold them accountable and really instill that defensive mindset.
Joe, I've always thought that, part of the challenge of being an NBA coach is just, getting the guys to respond and play hard for you. And I thought early in the season, after that rough loss to Memphis at Moda Center, I was curious to see how the guys would respond after Coach called them out for their lack of play. And then they bounced back and won back-to-back games against Minnesota. I thought that was impressive. What were your thoughts with the way that the players responded to Coach Billups and his call through the adversity at times during the course of the season? Did you learn something about the coach and the players through that process?
Every time. It's almost, the part I was most locked in on was not what happened to us, but how we would react to it. And Chad, I think you nailed it. The way we bounced back after that Memphis loss, it showed me a lot of heart, a lot of resolve, a lot of confidence. And, we had a lot of ups and downs this season. And often I thought we bounced back soon after a downturn. I thought we really responded well. And that was encouraging just in the culture and mentality that we're trying to build.
We're talking with Trailblazers General Manager Joe Cronin here on the Rip City Drive. I know that this was mentioned in your press conference on Sunday where you and Coach were talking about the synergy between you two. And I'm just wondering if you could shed some light on that. It's nice to know that you guys are on the same page and work well together. How long have you known Coach Billups? Did you know him from your time in Denver? Because you both hail from the Colorado area. Did you know him back then? Mm-hmm. And talk about your relationship and how well you guys work together now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we grew up in the same area in Denver. I was a senior in high school, and he was a junior in high school, and we played against each other in the state championship.
Oh, sweet.
So, yeah, it's crazy how it all plays out. But I didn't know him all that well. I knew of him, of course, and vice versa, but didn't meet him until we played that game. And then, the rest is history. It was so cool circling back decades later and now being together, working towards the same goal, building, this team and being partners in it. And I feel very fortunate to be on his side and, vice versa. I think we work really well together. We have a great working relationship. We share a lot of the same opinions about the game of basketball, and as far as style of play. And even as we're, evaluating players and that type of stuff, we have a lot of the same values that way. And it's been a blessing, and I've really enjoyed working with Chauncey.
What do you remember about that game? How much of a killer basketball player was he back then when you faced up with him?
He was significantly better than the rest of us.
It probably didn't take you long to figure that out, did it?
No, it didn't take long. And we knew it going in, and you really know it when you're playing against him. And the funny thing is he was so much better than everybody else, but it was like that from when he was a freshman. He was the best player by far in the state as a freshman, let alone as a junior when I ran into him. And, of course, he went on and had a Hall of Fame career. So it's fun, from Denver, which isn't a basketball powerhouse, but it was cool being a player of that caliber come through our city.
Well, it's pretty cool. I used to live in Denver before I moved out to the Northwest like you guys, and I have family in the Denver area, and they're always asking me about Chauncey because he is revered there in the Rocky Mountains, which is pretty cool. I wanted to ask you, Joe, about the young players, and I've talked with you about them throughout the course of the season, but if you can just give me a quick snapshot on what you saw with their development, because with the fans I talked to and the energy and vibe around the franchise right now, I think people are really excited about what the young guys did throughout the course of the season. Let's start with Scoot Henderson. What did you think about his development, and what did you see throughout the season with him that you were excited about?
Yeah, was really pleased with the season Scoot had, specifically in his comfort level. I thought that increased significantly as time went on. The point guard spot is a tough one to navigate, especially as a young player, and watching him figure it out and get his pace in order and watch his skill set develop, as far as his, comfort level as a playmaker off the bounce, reading pick and rolls, making open shots, finishing at the rim better. I was really happy to see Scoot take steps in all those regards. But I think the part about Scoot's season that probably doesn't get talked about as much, I was really happy with the way he guarded this year. And his physicality and his toughness, and obviously, he's a really high-level athlete. And then watching him, learn to navigate the defensive side of the ball, I was excited about that, and I'm looking forward to seeing him do a lot more of that.
All right, Shaedon Sharpe showed flashes of brilliance. I love the way he responded to being benched by Coach Billups. What did you see from Shaedon throughout the course of the year?
Yeah, I thought Shaedon had a great third year. He's obviously the second year was shortened with the injury, but I love seeing Shaedon, take that next step. When you're a ball handling guard that is asked to do a lot of different things, we've seen his role change and evolve over time. And I continue to be encouraged, as he's doing more and more things on the offensive side of the floor. He's initiating and pick and rolls. He's becoming a good spot-up shooter. Obviously, he's a really dynamic athlete around the hole, and I think it's been talked about a lot, the way he's finishing around the basket and, just really putting pressure on the rim. He's doing a great job there. And then, Chad, like you said, Coach called him out and challenged him defensively, and I thought he responded really well. We all know he's very capable of being a high-end defender, and I thought we saw more and more of that as the season went on.
All right, what about the rookie Donovan Clingan? I know you guys were thrilled to get him on draft night. As the season went along, he got more playing time and his conditioning ramped up. What'd you see from him?
Yeah, got more and more comfortable, and I'll say that a lot about young guys. It's just that those first year or two, it's them adapting to the speed and skill and length of the NBA on an NBA floor. It's complicated, and I thought the game really slowed down for Donovan as the season went along, and as his conditioning got better and better, and as he started facing teams and players multiple times, you just saw his comfort level continue to increase. And obviously he's already a very, very good defender, and now we're starting to see some offensive competency that we had seen flashes from him in college. We're starting to see that, hit the floor where obviously his offensive rebounding is huge for us, but also I thought he showed a lot as a passer, and as a finisher, I thought he improved his pace around the hole. He's doing a better job scoring with both hands in a crowd, and in time we'll see him make more and more threes, which hopefully will add to his level of a threat as an offensive player.
Now, Joe, Denny Avdia, he's so much fun to watch, and I was blown away by all the different things he was able to do. I don't know if he exceeded your expectation. He was tremendous this year, but what'd you see from Denny?
Love seeing Denny's usage increase significantly and his efficiency increase with it. That's such a hard thing for a young player to do. When you put the ball in their hands and ask them to do a lot, and then they ramp up their efficiency right alongside of it. And I thought that was such a huge development for Denny that, okay, he can be a lead guy, have the ball in his hands in a lot of different complicated situations and continue to produce really efficiently. And it's exciting just seeing Denny take that step and knowing he's still got many more steps he can take.
Yeah, we forget this. He's still young as well. 24 years old? You would think that he's got plenty of time to develop. Now, his front court mate, Tamani Kamara, one of the making that push for Defensive Player of the Year and really starting to showcase what he can do on that end of the floor, but also added some on the offense. What did you think about Tamani's development in year two with the team?
Love seeing that year-to-year improvement from Tamani. And it's interesting because, he had that injury at the end of last season that basically kept him off the basketball court until July. He was able to do some light shooting and stuff like that, but he didn't really get after it last summer until halfway through the summer. And yet we still saw a ton of improvement. Like you said, Chad, obviously an all-league defender already, but, shooting the ball with confidence, playing off the move some now, another offensive rebound machine. So the stuff that he's got done on both ends of the floor on a half-off season work schedule, it was really exciting. I can't wait to see the work he gets in when he gets the opportunity to have a full summer like this year.
We're talking with Trailblazers General Manager Joe Cronin here on the Rip City Drive. So we're getting ready for the offseason. What's the climate like around the league as teams continue to learn about the new CBA and its impact? How has this had an impact on just getting things done?
I think teams are learning to navigate it. It's of course I think we see this in each new CBA, at least ones that have somewhat significant changes, that it takes teams a little while to acclimate to that new climate or be a little more conservative than normal. So, as teams recalibrate, okay, what are these new rules? How do they limit us, or how do they prevent us from doing certain things that we want to do? And how do we value these contracts, and how do we appropriately rate what the value of picks are or young players? I think teams are still trying to figure all that out, but I think over time we've seen teams get more and more comfortable, and I expect that to continue, that as we just adjust to these new norms.
Hey, Joe, how would you describe this year's draft? I'm well aware of like the top 4 players and the quality of those guys at the top, but overall, what do you think about this year's crop?
Liking the depth. It's a good draft. From everything we're seeing, it's looking to be, whether we move up in the lottery, we like the top 4, or if we stay put at that 9-10 range, we're going to be happy there as well. We're liking the depth of this draft.
Hey, Joe, you mentioned this, but I wanted you to expand on it a bit. I know last year was frustrating from the standpoint that you had so many guys in and out of the lineup that it was hard for you to get valuable data on your players and what you had on the roster. You compare that to this year with the relative health and the guys who were able to play extended minutes. How much data were you able to collect throughout the course of this season, and how helpful is that as you get ready for the offseason?
Yeah, quite a bit. We've seen most of our guys, all of our core guys got north of 1,000 minutes each at least, some double and 1.5 times that. So we were able to see these guys playing a lot of different lineups, playing a lot of different situations, playing a lot of different roles. And it was really helpful. It allows us now to, understand that, okay, this is what this group is capable of. And now we can be a lot more intentional about the type of player we're adding, whether it's, we need this certain type of skill set or we need this certain type of personality. We can be more intentional and start shaping this roster that fits this core group of players that we have.
Hey, Joe, I wondered if you could we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's important for people to understand. But your role as general manager since you've taken over, can you talk about how supportive Jody Allen has been during your tenure with the team when it comes to whatever it is that you need to get done in that process?
Sure. I've really enjoyed working for Jody. She's been awesome and a great leader for us. It's the help she provides, the intellectual support that she gives me, constantly being a great sounding board and challenging me and getting me to think about, things in different ways or questioning, hey, is this a better thought than this, or is this a better approach than this? Like the way she challenges me has been incredibly helpful. And then of course, financially, since I took over, we've made so many changes within our organization. She's been really supportive in helping me out a really high-end staff, from right out of the gate, added 3 really good assistant general managers, Andre Patterson, Mike Schmitz, Sergio Oliva, completely reworked our health and performance department, added the Rip City Remix, revamped our kitchen, our whole food program. And she just keeps investing in this team. And it's been incredible that, basically when we need something, she's right there for us, whether it's, from her point of view or her perspective or, financially, if we need to change something, she's right there for us. So it's been, we feel really lucky to have Jody.
That's great. I've just got a few more questions for you. Speaking of the remix, how helpful has it been to have a G League team here in town and the benefits of that for what you're trying to accomplish?
It's been great. We love the remix. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but they practice at our practice facility, which we consider a huge advantage, that the remix players, they feel like they are a part of the Trailblazers. And so, they're there with us every day, being in our building, using our same equipment. And of course, playing in our city and, those two teams being able to cross over quite a bit and support each other. And, we've had great attendance at our remix games as far as our players going and Trailblazer staff. And I love going to remix games. So that's been great. But then, of course, the player development component, being able to get our two ways a ton of run with the remix and any guys that we assign from the Blazers to the remix and getting them extra repetitions and run or practices. It's been incredibly valuable. And also just as an innovation lab, we've tried to do a lot of out of the box experimenting with the remix that is helping shape some of the decisions the Trailblazers have made and will make. So it was a critical addition to us, and we're just getting started with the remix and hope that it'll continue to add more and more value.
Now, Joe, I love people's stories. Everyone's got a story, and I didn't know this until a couple of weeks ago when I found out that you started out as an intern with the Trailblazers back in 2006, and you were like the classic intern like I was in radio where you weren't making any money, and you were willing to do whatever it took for your living expenses and just to find a way to get through to give yourself an opportunity in basketball. What was that process like to go from that up into doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, an awesome ride and adventure, and a very challenging one. Since I was a kid, like when people would say, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" My answer was always be an NBA general manager.
That's great.
So I told myself I was just finishing up grad school, didn't have a job, didn't know what I was going to do. Learned about this internship in Portland, basketball operations internship that was available. Was lucky enough to get it. Came up to Portland, worked for free for a year, and just grinded away and refereed basketball at night and racked up credit cards just trying to pay bills. And, I think a lot of people have been through this and just, did whatever I could to make my mark. And I was just hoping at the end of the internship that they'd give me a longer opportunity and bring me on in some capacity. And it worked out that way. And then over time, I was really fortunate to work for really good people that were really talented, that cared about me and were willing to teach me things, and they believed in me and gave me all these opportunities. And for me, I really feel like it was the right place at the right time. And then I had the right mentality and right skill set to where I was just kept learning and chopping away at different jobs and just kept fine-tuning my skill set, and then finally made it up to this level as general manager and felt, extremely fortunate. And it was a really cool moment for me, that knowing that this was a lifelong dream. So that for me, that was great. And now my goal is just, okay, let's do the best job possible at this dream job.
Yeah, I love the story. That's awesome. And the ground cover work to get to that point. I got one more question. So
thank you.
What does your schedule look like now with, you've got the lottery coming up on May 12th and the draft coming up in June? Mm-hmm. Like, what are some of the different things you're going to be focused on and doing over the next, 6 to 8 weeks?
Sure. A lot of it's getting this next year's roster built. These next 3 months are big ones for the Trailblazers. Like you said, Chad, we got the lottery first, and then in between the lottery and or in between mid-May and mid-June, we'll just do a ton of draft prep, ton of talking to other teams, seeing what their goals are going into the off season and into the draft and free agency. Seeing what deals are available, and then do the draft, do free agency, any trades that come along. So just really working towards getting the team in as good a shape as possible going into next season.
That's great. It's Trailblazers General Manager Joe Cronin with us. Well, Joe, congratulations on the extension. I'm excited about that, and thank you for the time that you share with me throughout the course of the year when I'm peppering you with questions and being patient with me. I thank you.
I love it, Chad. Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm a big fan of Joe Cronin. He's very approachable. I love the fact that I can, reach out to him and ask questions. He's always happy to answer them. He's just the exact opposite of his predecessor in terms of how he operates. And I love seeing guys grow into their role. We're seeing it right now with Chauncey Billups. We're seeing it with Joe Cronin. Now, he's got a lot of work to do, and he understands that. But I know his heart's in the right place. He's going to continue to grind and do whatever is necessary to get this team back in a position to where we can start thinking deep playoff runs. And that's exciting. But love the young guys and the energy that they have brought to the entire, town, the team, the franchise, everything. I think it's great. So big thanks to Joe for taking time to join the show. And don't forget, the next big date is coming up on May 12th. That is NBA Draft Lottery Night, when we'll find out if the Blazers are able to jump up in the top 4, if we get the answered prayer that we have access to Cooper Flag, or where they're going to land. We'll find out on May 12th, and then the draft coming up later in June. We'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. Chad Doing here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Well, thanks for your time today. I've enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the weekend. This is my first full weekend outside of the basketball season. So I'm going to enter it. I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to appreciate the time. Also, I hope everyone out there has a chance and an opportunity to enjoy Resurrection Sunday coming up this weekend. Um, and I think the weather, for the most part, is going to be pretty good. Maybe not so much on Sunday, but I know going into next week, we're going to have more nice weather. So I'll be hitting Wildwood tomorrow morning, get some golf in, and then I'm just going to enjoy my weekend. It's so weird to have this frame of mind where it's like I've got options now. I don't have something or the next event, taking up all of my time, which is really cool. So I'm looking forward to this weekend, and I hope you guys are as well. Most importantly, though, the playoffs. I'm going to sit back. I'm definitely going to watch. I can't wait for, Rockets and Warriors. I think it's going to be terrific. It's going to be fun to watch Luka and LeBron in the playoffs. We'll get a chance to get a good look at them tomorrow. And then I want to see how some of the other series play out. So I'll watch some NBA playoffs for sure. And then we will get set and ready to go for the NFL draft next week. Love the draft. Big fan of the draft. And I'm excited to see where some of these players go. Most excited to see where Cam Scatterboot ends up, but I'm intrigued. What are the Giants going to do? Will they take Shador Sanders? What team's going to take Travis Hunter? These are big questions. Will, in fact, Tennessee take Cam Ward at number 1, which I think they will. But it's pretty exciting. I love seeing where these guys end up. And then before you know it, a new NFL season not too far away. And then we got the draft lottery coming up on May 12th. A lot of good things coming down the pipe, which is cool. Excited about the draft lottery. Until it says no, the Blazers are not getting number 1, I'm holding on to a little bit of hope that maybe we'll get some good fortune. But those are kind of the next, big things coming up. NBA playoffs, NFL draft, and then May 12th we get the lottery to see where the Blazers are going to be selecting. That's pretty much how things are going down. So we'll see. But, the playoffs are fun. But this week, we couldn't ask for more. The weather all week has been fabulous. The sunshine, the weather, and the opportunity to enjoy ourselves. Isn't it nice? So good. So good. And I enjoyed the NBA play-in tournament. It's one of those things where I poo-pooed the idea, just like I do with a lot of things. I'm like, come on, the play-in tournament, that's absurd. But I got to admit it works. You add a few more teams into the mix who have a chance to achieve a playoff berth. Those games have proven to be pretty good. Like the Warriors and Grizzlies was a good basketball game. That was fun. That was fun to watch. I enjoy it. So I don't know. It's funny how I've learned to maybe to be a little more patient and give something a chance before I just immediately start cracking on it, right? It's like we're programmed where we almost always have to have a hot take and be ready to jump on something. But I got to admit, I'm down with the NBA play-in tournament. It's not bad. The concept is okay. But that's pretty much it. I'm also scouring to see if you have any recommendations for concerts, maybe live shows locally here in the Portland area. I'm really in the mood to go check out some music. So if you've got some good ideas, recommendations, things I need to check out, hit me up because now I got time. I got time to go check things out. So hit me up and let me know. Just reach out to me. Hit me up on social at Chad and Rip City. Send me a DM or, tweet at me. Let me know what's out there and what's available because I want to go check out some shows. I'm kind of in the mood now to go check out some live music. I'm more into, I'd rather go and check out a live show. Like I've got a couple of shows I watch, but I don't spend a lot of time diving into television. Like when I'm eating dinner, like I've been watching Celtic City, which has been fabulous. I like to have a program on that I can enjoy while I'm eating, just to kind of turn my brain off a little bit. But I don't have like shows that I watch religiously. Like I'm going to watch Andor, and I'm excited about that. But I don't have these shows that I'm like, I jump on and have to watch. I'd rather go and check out, some type of event or live entertainment. And I love music. And that's what's great about this time of year is that as we get closer to summer, more concerts, more concerts or different shows at outdoor venues. And I'm totally down with that kind of stuff. All right. So here's the plan. We got the weekend. And then coming up next week, Rip City Drive will be back on Monday at 3. And we'll talk some NBA playoffs, but we're really going to start gearing up and focusing in on NFL draft coverage, getting ready for the draft, talking about the draft, and really trying to focus in on some of the players. And I'll take a look at some of the local players and where they might end up as well. But that's going to be the plan and focus for what we're going to do next week. So there you have it. So enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your Sunday. And then you guys have a great weekend. I will talk to you on Monday, Rip City Drive at 3 with Chad doing here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Big thanks to Michael Shacker and to everyone else out there who are listening. Have a great weekend, my friends.